Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I wasn't going to do an introduction to this video, but it seems like it's necessary because I'm covering a lot of ground here today. Today's Friday, August 16th. I just made the other video public, my last video about Trump and Elon Musk's debacle in terms of their interview. And I was going to cover just weird stuff, like not so much about politics in this video, and that's what I'm still going to do. But I started off with like people just being like strange and incompetent and unnatural. A couple of just like random people and new policy where they're given jail sentences for stuff that you prison sentences for things in the for if you post on social media in England, like it's just stuff like that. And I covered that great breakdancer Raygun from Australia. Probably by now she's like her fame is probably gone. Like her being obsessed with on the internet for her complete breakdancing failure. But it's just when this video is going to come out, which is I think tomorrow, Saturday, or actually maybe Sunday. So, but this video is about people being incompetent, right? And well, let's start off here. You can see this image here. And there was this. I started watching the movie The Watchmen. It's a comic book movie. I wasn't familiar with the comic book series from DC. And it's set in the 70s, I think, so 60s and 70s, right? Nixon is president, his third term, according to the movie. And they started off by playing the great Bob Dylan song, The Times They Are Changing, which is just an epic song on a lot of levels. And, I every once in a while I hear it and I like really get into the song. And they did like a montage of the universe that these heroes live in. And I tried to watch this movie a couple times before and it was off-putting. I thought maybe it was just stiff or I didn't really like it for some reason or other. But I started to enjoy the movie, and it had like a great montage of the nuclear war that was about to ensue, and then just things are going on in the '60s and Kennedy assassination in a different sort of universe, right? And they're playing the Bob Dylan song, right? So I went to listen to the Bob Dylan song on YouTube, and a person left like an epic comment here, and they say, "A generation rallied behind this song. The same generation forgot its meaning." And I've talked about this before with the boomer hippies. Now, the boomer hippies have done some great things, right? Like for me doing the Sajmark meditation, there's all these boomers that kind of woke up and they found spiritual, movements in like places like India. And that's transformed my life. Plus they did wonderful things about the environment and they did things that were good about like organic foods and things like this. There are some things that they did that have made our lives better. Supplements, various types of herbal, different alternative medicines and things. They came out of the boomer hippie movement, right? But at the end of the day, like the boomer hippies, it's a failed generation because they became what they hated, right? So remember, they were upset about being forced to believe and to adhere to the Christian right-wing conservative power structure that was forcing them to act a certain way, right? And they rebelled against that, which again was a good thing. Like that was helpful, was something that needed to happen. But now they've become that, like they're forcing their beliefs on the everybody, right? And their beliefs are twisted now. The liberal agenda has gone twisted, and like it's gone too far to the left, and it's bizarre, and it's taking humanity in a like like a direction it can't recover from, right? Like it's the immorality and all of it, the so-called freedoms, freedoms to do wrong and to do like devil worshipping crap, right? Like, yeah, we have freedom of choice, the freedom to choose the wrong thing, the lack of discipline. And they're forcing people the same way that they were forced when they were hippies, when they're fighting the man, right? Fighting the powers that be. And they were, for free speech on their terms. But now they've become owners, they become corporate CEOs, and they become these people of money, power, and political power, and they're doing the same thing to our generations or the generations that followed them, especially these young kids, and indoctrinating them the way that they were rebelling against. And it makes it much worse that they're wrong and they're taking us in a horrible direction, like the worst possible direction. They're taking humanity over the cliff. But to behave the same way towards the youth, the not just the youth, but everybody, but the youth particularly, and force their worldview on them. And they hated that so much when it was done to them. And to do that same thing that you hated so much when you're young to the people when you become powerful, the cycle of abuse, you've become what you hate. And like you're just a complete POS, right? When you become what you hate, that's a complete failure. Like, I don't think a generation has failed as much as the boomer hippies have. Despite the things that I said, the good things that they brought in, they failed, like, epically, like in ways that, it's just they're an embarrassment to, like, existence, right? Like their whole existence, their whole egregore, their whole consciousness, group consciousness, is an embarrassment to all of creation, right? Like, this failure is epic. And also, like, this idea the times are a changing song by Bob Dylan, the things that needed to change then are the same things that the boomer hippies are doing now that need to change as well, right? And so there's that. So on top of it, there's some epic events that I'm going to cover. JoJo Magoo and Kamala Harris appear together, and that's got to be hilarious. And, like, I haven't seen it yet. And then she says a sit-down sort of conversation with Wells, her vice president, Walls, his weird ass name. And they're trying to push that these other guys are weird, and they are. But once you throw the weird word out there, it's like when I said the word ghoul, like it wasn't being used. And I saw Celine Dion and Pete Davidson as ghouls. But once you saw like them as ghouls, you're like, well, they're all ghouls, right? Like all these Hollywood celebrities, all these politicians, there's this ghoulish aspect to them all, right? And so when you say the word weird, when Kamala Harris and her cackle and just all of it, and Walsh and this weird, they're whole, like this is bringing it back. Like, you're so weird, kind of like some high schooler looking at these adults. But that's what they all are, right? Their politicians are very strange people. They're unnatural. They don't act like natural people because they are not authentic. It's, Trump is like the most authentic person, and he's like a pathological liar, flim-flam man. But he's not like hiding it. That's the only difference between him and the rest of these people. And then there is a weird thing with J.D. Vance because he's so strange, and he has this weird take that's like sort of anti-conservative, but he's blaming it on the liberals. And then Trump does this press conference, and he gets into the whole. I mean, he just won't stop lying and embellishing this, this non-existent gunshot wound to his ear in the whole event, right? Like, I saw a little bit. I turned the TV on, and it was showing that part. So I'm going to go through his press conference. It'll probably take me a couple of videos to go through it because it's like an hour, almost 2 hours long. And he just keeps on talking to the detriment, like the Republican people and his staff are probably pulling out their hair because he's just talking too much. He's just, he's not staying on point and focused because he's running against incumbents who are failing, right, who are doing a bad job. And he keeps on making it about his agenda and his own personal things that he's doing. All right, so let's get into it here. It's going to be like an epic video. Oh, and I need to say, subscribe, resubscribe, the whole shadow banning thing. I mean, it's, again, bookmark my channel, leave comments, even if it's just an emoji or something. Thumbs up the video. Always do that because if you want to continue to see this content and keep my channel going, there's also a membership program. And I haven't been talking about merch. I have some merch. there, for whatever that is. But, there's all this stuff that people can do to sort of let YouTube know that that this channel's value to them and they want to continue to see the content. But anyways, let's get into the stuff here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm not going to do a normal introduction. Usually what I do is I do an introduction. And then today's Tuesday, August 15th, and I'm just uploading my video about Elon Musk and Trump's disastrous interview, which is hilarious and, full of great comic relief. But anyways, I'm going to avoid all that. I'll do the introduction tomorrow or whatever when I start, getting more and more content for this video. But I always want to start off with 3 videos just about the stuff that's going on in the world. There's going to be a lot of things like that here. I'm going to get away from some of the political things and the news items. And this is just people being frickin' people. And it's a disaster. And so somebody sent me this. This is a girl who is reacting to the Netflix Umbrella Academy finale. And she's very disappointed. And I can't show you all of it. She swears too much. Well, let me see how much I can show you here. I can, let's see what happens.
They don't know. They don't. Bitch, whoever came up with that fuck ass ending for Umbrella Academy, bitches, you're gonna catch these fucking hands.
Now, I don't know anything about the Netflix Umbrella Academy. I've seen it, I didn't watch the show, but I've seen, I don't think I saw a trailer. Maybe I saw brief snippets of it. It looked pretty sucky. Somebody might have sent me something on Instagram about how Netflix is bailing completely on the series. It might have to do with that one actor transitioning or something. I'm not sure what it was, right? But anyways, Netflix seemed to bring the series to an abrupt ending. It must have had some sort of a following, but not good enough to keep it going. And this young woman, who seems to be in her 20s, is very upset by the ending, which, I'm not sure what exactly happens, but she's pretty pissed about it. And then...
Y'all just made me so fucking mad. Y'all just made me so fucking mad. Y'all had me thinking that they were gonna come back. Y'all had me thinking it was just an ordinary day. You stupid ass suck my fucking dick. Suck my fucking dick. And those ass flowers don't mean shit to me. That's fucking bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. And Ben and Lila, y'all can get some of this too.
I thought at first when she threatened to assault the writers or the people who made this ending possible without ever being able to have the mental faculties to go and figure out who those people were and make contact with them. And so she's threatening them, but she has, just, all of it and her rage towards the ending here. But then she goes after, now she just goes after Ben and Lila, who I don't think that had anything to do with the, I think this is maybe her ex-boyfriend. And so she, and so let's hear what she has to say about Ben and Lila.
Because first of all, Ben, you and your ass girlfriend, y'all can go yourselves.
Okay, so there's that, right? There's a lot of anger there on the internet. I don't get to see a lot of it. Sometimes people send me stuff like this. It's young people, immature people. But still, this is where their heads are at, right? And then one of my viewers sent me this, right about the same time. And it's a guy who gets very upset at a gentleman wearing MAGA stuff, a liberal guy.
I am looking forward to releasing this video because I just want to purchase something. Get the off in here, man. Man. You can't stand your racist mother. Racist? Yeah. Right. I'm not a racist. He's wearing some Trump bull.
Okay, so I didn't want to have to beep everything, but it goes on from there. And the liberal guy, it looks like a vape shop. If he's at some sort of a vape shop or something, convenience store, I don't know. He refused to serve the MAGA guy because he says he's racist, and he is, bought into the propaganda. Not that MAGA people are great. I make fun of them all the time. But, people's inability to articulate their point of view, and they get overly emotional, and they just swear like, potty mouth. I mean, it's just over the top, right? And, they just, they're really dumb and emotional and like very limited. And I think there's a lot more of this on the internet than I get to see. You guys probably know more about than I do.
Went on to say that you did not want your money going to immigrants who, quote, rape our kids and get priority, end quote. This offence is so serious that an immediate custodial sentence is unavoidable. Would you stand, please? The sentence that I pass has been reduced by 1/3 to reflect your guilty plea. The sentence is one of 20 months imprisonment.
So this guy posted something on the internet, on social media, about not wanting to pay taxes, that money's going to go to, I guess, some sort of illegal aliens there in Great Britain. And that opinion got him 20 months in jail, almost 2 years, over a year and a half in jail. He got a reduced sentence because he pleaded guilty. But this is the second thing. My wife sent me this 2 days ago or yesterday or something. And this is the second thing we've seen. I showed you the video of some guy getting arrested at his home because of something he posted on Facebook. So this is where they're going with that, right? They're not allowing you to express yourself or have critical thinking skills. And in the safety of your own social media, very few people have access to your social media. Like most people, your social media range is limited to under, I would say, 200 people. I would say 99% of all people, their social media, wherever it is limited. People who can get access to it is limited to about 200 people or so, because, it's whatever amount of friends you have. Let's say you have more friends than that, but the majority of your friends aren't on social media. People don't even post on Facebook anymore because they're not getting any likes and responses because, Facebook just runs ads. They hide your social media from other people on your friends list, and most people aren't using Facebook. And so YouTube is limiting your range in terms of who they're going to recommend those videos. And most people's videos don't even make it into some sort of recommended list. They have these dead channels. And so most people posting on social media, they're going to affect maybe 200 or so people. And if one of those people gets offended and rats you out, you can go to jail in England for nothing. Like your opinion is going to have no effect on this. It's not going to start a revolution or start, some sort of, it's just people just venting on social media, which we just saw these other two people doing, right? Like this is the state of things are really bad. This is like horrible. This, the degradation of humanity. The next thing is this woman, Raygun from Australia, who did one of the most epic breakdancing. I watched a little of the breakdancing for the Olympics, and it was horrible. Breakdancing in general is just, it's really played out. It's just kind of goofy, especially the kind of breakdance they were doing. Like they weren't doing like locking or popping or some of the other things that have, they're doing this stuff where you spin around the floor and you serve each other. You've been served. And so this person writes, once again, a reminder how easily black cultural expressions, once demonized and marginalized, can be co-opted and packaged for consumption and ridiculed when placed in the hands of those who don't understand or honor the essence. Again, it's just funny. Like she had this epic fail, this woman. There's just these poses she's doing. This isn't there's one pose that she does. I don't know where it is. This guy had an issue with his junk. But here they got the thing with cats. There's all these memes about it, right? I can only use so much of it because they'll copyright it. Okay, I'm editing. I just want to add this. It's the next day, Friday, August 16th. Bunch of epic stuff. Trump's speech, Trump's press conference, and there's a wonderful, hilarious exchange between Walz and Kamala Harris. They're trying to have a organic conversation. It's hilariously bad, but all that stuff is coming. But anyways, now I'm talking from your future, from my future. Well, it's maybe your past. I don't know. It's my future from when I've covered this thing here, right? But I just want to comment on this goofy overstating of cultural appropriation. There's no cultural appropriation. It's all cultural appropriation or it's not, or it's none of that, right? We live in a multicultural country where, people cook Mexican food, right? Like how many people make burritos? I mean, Tim Walz is even going to get into white guy tacos. It's just kind of hilariously bad. We'll get into that in a bit, right? But we all cook different ethnic foods, and we eat ethnic foods, and people like that. People want their foods to be, again, I mean, people are going to then change the recipe and go against tradition. So there's some of that, but for the most part, people want to expand their customer base, right? But people are using things invented from various cultures. Like every day you do that. Basketball was invented by a white guy, James Naismith, right? It was a white guy sport, just like baseball was. In fact, they didn't even let black people play, but they played anyway, right? Because, and they became the best at it, right? Black people are for the most part, the best people at basketball, certainly in America. And so that can be considered cultural appropriation, right? So you look at something's source. I mean, even the language we speak a white language, right? But language itself came from Sanskrit, which is an Indian language. That was the original language. And so there's all this cultural appropriation. India was a place where they discovered a soul 200,000 years ago. It's recorded in ancient, Hindu texts back before the Ramayana. There was, the knowledge of the soul, these Vedic texts that are hundreds of thousands of years old, right? The concepts of zero and things came from that culture. So there's cultural appropriation everywhere. We're all appropriating cultures all the time, so it's not a real thing. Because it's something where if you have something good, you want to share it, that's like the higher end of it, or you want to make a profit on it. So the more people that do your thing, the better. And the fact that breaking is now in the Olympics should be a celebration of that urban culture, right? The black culture, the urban culture that invented it. And they're going to need people from all over the world to do breaking. It's not cultural appropriation. They're going to need people from all over the world to do it. And some of the people are going to suck at it, like this woman from Australia. And that's just funny. It's not offensive. It's not anything bad. It's funny, right? Like to get offended by that, like she's stealing your culture. There's nothing that she's doing that resembles breakdancing. It's somebody trying something and failing at it. And it makes, it's humorous for people, right? I mean, we have this moment of joy, the shared joy of watching somebody like completely fail. And so, like, that's all this thing is. But they just are going after her on Twitter. She spins around here and like she's really failing epically, right? There's one pose in general. I don't know if they have it here, but it's the one that I've seen so many memes about it, right? And she's like absolutely horrid at this thing. And this woman here, I mocked her here, which is kind of funny. This is not the real person here.
Rachel Gunn, but my main peeps know me as Raygun. I think what people don't understand about breaking is that it's not just a dance, it's not just a sport, it's a lifestyle. When you're a big girl like me, there's no days off. One minute I might be making a sandwich, and the next time I'm hitting the sprinkler, or I'm rolling around on the floor. It just comes over me. I have a PhD in dance culture, so legally that makes me good at it. Good at dance. Breaking represents life. So, for example, when I hit my signature kangaroo move, kangaroo, Australia, Raygun, a lot of people miss that. I'm actually a professor and I teach about the cultural politics of breakdancing. And breaking was invented by African American teens in New York City in the 1970s. So I thought, who better to represent that culture than me? Raygun. People are saying I was appropriating dance culture because I'm a white woman, but here's the thing. When you've already decolonized dance, as I have done, you can't then recolonize it. It cancels out.
But here's the original Raygun.
Was very strong.
Your background's in ballroom dancing, right?
Yeah, I did ballroom for many years, and I also did jazz and tap and some hip hop as well.
I bet she sucked at all those as well.
Is there any kind of parallels between the two?
Look, I mean, I think my understanding of musicality going into breaking.
Musicality. She understands musicality. Here's the pose right here. This is the epic pose. So this is, just somebody failing and being harassed by the internet. But the internet or the people in the world could not just allow her to fail. And here she goes here. There she goes. Doing her thing. This is,
to convey.
Like there you go. This is her. Point to your Australia thing. There you go. Look at her arms. Look at her go. She got 0 points, right? Whatever she did, she, I guess, lost round 1. It was some kind of elimination tournament. I don't know. But this stuff here, I mean, I don't know how she should get a point for the kangaroo hop. Look at that. Boom. And the sprinkler. And the foot up in the air. Like, how did she get points for that? Like, how did she get some points for that? Boom. There she goes. Like, why didn't she get points for this right here? Look, that takes a lot. This is the move right there. Boom. That was it. Here's another meme here. Some sort of fatality.
Things that I never thought I'd be able to do. Like, I never thought I'd be able to spin on my head, and now I can spin on my head, and that's just wild to me.
By day, Dr. Rachel Gunn is a lecturer at Sydney's Macquarie Uni.
Everyone, we're in week 7 now. Portfolio.
So she's a lecturer at a university.
And they practice for 2 big events.
Then there's the big breakdancing thing.
Support for people to get in breaking, because I know people of my generation and earlier.
How was your generation?
The top level breakers are just so.
Top level breakers. But here's what I want to comment on, right?
Hi everyone, Raygun here.
Raygun.
I just want to start by thanking all the people who have supported me.
All 3 of them. I mean, people must be bailing on her like crazy.
I really appreciate the positivity, and I'm glad I was able to bring some joy into
It definitely brought some joy. She brought joy because everyone I know who's watched the videos have laughed. So, I mean, she did bring joy.
Lives, that's what I hoped. I didn't realize that would also open the door to so much hate, which has frankly been pretty devastating.
The hate, like, she sucks at breakdancing, right? And she was in the Olympics, and the whole Olympics breakdancing sucked. I watched it. It was like, why are they doing this? Why do they make this? It's not a sport. Any sport that you have to judge, you have judging, sucks. You saw it in gymnastics again. You see it in, like, slam dunk contests. You see it in ice skating. Where there's judges scoring what you do, then it's never, you're never going to be satisfied. Very seldom do you see somebody who's just the clear winner, who's so much better than everybody else. And the judging is always, it's human. It's subject to human bribery. I mean, all the stuff that happened with that, the girl with Nancy Kerrigan, all that stuff, right? Tanya Harding, if you've seen the Tanya Harding movie, she was the first to land some of these jumps, and she was a better skater. They just didn't give her the proper scores because she was like redneck trash, right? But anything that involves scoring, it's not really a sport. Like, it's hard to, it's not, it's more of an exhibition, right? But breakdancing is not, there's competition there, but it's silly. And they don't have a lot of breakdancing talent in Australia, apparently. And so they got this 40-year-old woman who went out and kind of made a fool of herself. And that itself is the punishment, right? Like, what else? I mean, where's the hate coming from?
Well, I went out there and I had fun. I did take it very seriously.
And if she didn't and she was trolling, then it's hilarious, right? Like, what? Who cares if, what, you're going to take breakdancing seriously. You know, like if it was trolling, then good on her, right? Good on you, because I mean, it's like it's a great thing, right? Like it's wonderful trolling. Like if I got the opportunity to go do that, I would totally do that, right? Not that I'm too lazy to, but it's funny, like to do that and do it like with the deadpan, like you were serious, and just fail like that. It's funny. It's very entertaining.
I worked my butt off.
Like this is like a Saturday Night Live skit, except it was funny. It's something you see a comedian might do, or something you would see, like the Impractical Jokers. One of the punishments was the guy had to break dance at halftime, and when someone can't break dance and they have to fake it, it's funny, because the breakdance itself isn't as entertaining as somebody failing at it.
Preparing for the Olympics, and I gave my all, truly.
That itself is funny. Is that your best?
I'm honoured to have been a part of the Australian Olympic team and to be part of breaking's Olympic debut. What the other athletes have achieved has just been phenomenal.
Not other athletes. You're not an athlete. You're a breakdancer, and you're the worst one.
In regards to the allegations and misinformation floating around, I'd like to ask everyone to please refer to the recent statement made by the AOC, as well as...
So they said that her husband was the only judge, and she formed some breakdancing federation where she won because she's, whatever. She had more power than these other people, and there was actually quality breakdancers that she cheated out. And now people are giving her death threats and, harassing her and her family. Because of why? Like, because she sucked at something? Like, it doesn't matter. Australia was not going to walk away with a medal in this thing. Australia women weren't going to produce a breakdancer that was going to beat whoever won.
The posts on the Ozbreaking Instagram page, as well as the WDSF Breaking for Gold page.
Breaking for gold. Wait, there was some thought you were going to win the gold medal?
Bit of a fun fact for you. There are actually no points in breaking. If you want to see how the judges thought I compared to my opponents, you can actually see the comparison percentages across the 5 criteria on Olympics.com. All the results are there.
Come on, do you think that you actually nailed it and they looked at you and they gave you any kind of credit compared to your opponent? Because, how bad was your opponent that you could even be considered like legitimate? Like it was horrible. Now, I've already stated I don't agree with any of the hate, any of these things, right? All she did was be really bad at something. And she gave it a go. She gave it a go. But there should be no hate, any of these things, right? And so, most of the stuff she's saying I kind of agree with or whatever. I sympathize with her situation. But she doesn't understand how bad you suck, like how bad you have to suck for this response from the internet, right? Like she doesn't realize how bad it looked and how bad she was compared to the other people. That this is a worldwide global phenomenon. Like this is an epic fail. This is the kind of failure that goes completely viral, that anybody looks at it starts laughing because you suck so bad. Like this is humiliating, right? Like she doesn't get it. She doesn't get that part of it. Like she's, whatever rationalization, she's saying, well, you can see the scores that the judges gave me compared to the other person. Like nobody's even wanting to look at the other people because your thing stands out. The excellence of your failure, the excellence of your humiliation is so over the top, like it speaks for itself. So that's what you have to come to terms with, like how bad you are at this thing. Like how delusional you were to go out there and think this wasn't going to happen, right? And the people around you and the breakdancing people in Australia and your loved ones and being like, dude, if you go do this shit out there, you're going to be this is going to be bad.
I'm going to be in Europe for a few weeks for some pre-planned downtime, but I'd really like to ask the press to please stop harassing my family, my friends.
Exactly. You run away to Europe and let your family take the heat for your abysmal breakdancing performance. I can't believe that they're this upset about it. How do you get upset by this, right? they seem like mild-mannered people for the most part, relaxed people. Judging from my experience of watching Farmer Wants a Wife Australia and Crocodile Dundee and The Crocodile Hunter. And, some of my viewers are Australian. But, I mean, like, there's nothing to get upset about here. This is hilarious.
Friends, the Australian breaking community, and the broader street dance community. Everyone has been through a lot as a result of this, so
Of your abysmal performance, like, it was so bad. She's wrecked people's lives. It was so bad, like, the whole thing. I mean, breakdancing's a joke, and this is a joke, and there's nothing, I mean, it's, like, interesting for about 30 seconds. And somebody can do something kind of, I mean, it's not, like, as good as gymnastics, right? It's not as good as, like, other forms of dance. Like, there's other form of dance that's more impressive, right? And so,
ask you to please respect their privacy. I'll be happy to answer more questions on my return to Australia.
Okay, so people have moved on by then. Here are some of the memes here. Breaking Bad, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Scooby-Doo. They got her on Air Australia here. So there's this person called the Hatua Girl who, if you don't know who that is, it's not important. A bunch of my viewers sent me stuff to do with her, and I clicked on a YouTube video, and then they started sending me all these, recommending all these stuff with her. There's a meme, I can't find it, but somebody had posted somewhere, where it said, and they show the Hatua Girl, and they're saying, it's over, we found somebody new. And then they had a picture of the Raygun, right? And so this is just good fun, something to laugh at, something to make fun of. And people are sharing this. Like if you go to Instagram or Facebook or any of these social media, Twitter, people are all sharing these things and they're laughing at it, showing. My wife and I watched the video together. It's hilarious, right? And so it's bringing joy. Like nobody cared about breaking. Like I saw it, I'm like, oh my God, they got breaking in there, right? I mean, there's all these weird sports. There was some sports called tech ball where they play ping pong with a soccer ball, and you can only play soccer rules using your head and your chest and your feet. And, it's just like ping pong, but with soccer. And there was a game that I saw the other day on ESPN called Roof Ball. It was invented like 30 years ago in Oregon, where some guy got a rugby ball at a Goodwill store. And him and his family played over the summer, him and his friends. And he'd throw the ball up, and if they hit the tailpipe, it was like the exhaust pipe, the heating pipe. It was not the tailpipe, but you get the idea. There's a pipe protruding from the roof. And if you hit it and you caught the ball, you got 6 points. If you got it to go around there's a chimney, but the pipe was right next to the chimney. If you got the ball to go around the pipe and you caught it, you got 10 points, right? And over the years, they played a little bit, then they forgot about it. And then when he got older, he was like in his 40s, his kids wanted to play. And so they revived the game and put a video up on some social media. And it became like a viral sensation. And now there's a thing called, they go to his mom's house and these old people play this game, right? It's a sport that was on ESPN, right? So I'm watching this, I'm editing here. Let me just add this here. I'm watching this sport on ESPN. It's raining. It's like, Oregon, Pacific Northwest, it's raining. And they're out there in tents, and it's a wet lawn and driveway. These old people are slipping around. I mean, the people are all over 40 playing the game. And there's a time where one of the guys overthrows the original pipe, but he hits the smaller pipe. And it's going to be 10 points if he catches it, right? But he's got to catch it. He gets no points if he doesn't catch it. And so he runs to the front to catch it, and he breaks off a branch of like the Japanese maple tree, right? He's wrecking this guy's mom's house. And so the guy who invented it is being interviewed. He's a contestant. He doesn't, he doesn't win, right? But he's, it's his thing. And he thanks his mom because he doesn't live in his house anymore, and his stepdad for letting them use the house. And then they show the mom coming outside, picking up the branch of the Japanese maple. She's like, what the fuck? You know, like and so this is how amateurish it is. And they have all these sports now, right? Like slam ball and, you know, variations. Like they have pickleball and now variations of the pickleball, like all these things. And it's, you know, these sports are growing and they're adding them to the Olympics, some of these things. And breakdancing isn't, you know, really even a sport, and they've decided to add it to their demise. Because, you know, breakdancing is no longer impressive. When it came out, sure, there were some unique things. But did anybody go, do you see that move and the breaking? Like, did anybody send you a video? Wow, this is break. Like, I watched a little bit of the bronze medal, the competition. It was an American and Canadian. And, you know, they can do some cool stuff, but nothing impressive, right? Like, you know, there's some things you look at, wow, that was really cool. Like, this is, you know, there's a show of athletic ability or something where you go, ooh, the crowd goes, ooh, some of those skateboarding jumps they do, snowboarding, things like this, you know, where they're pushing the limit, right? And breakdancing isn't that anymore. Did anybody share any of the great, you got to see the breaking competition. It's amazing, right? And so Raygun, with her epic failure, saves this thing, because that was the most impressive thing that could have come out of this thing. Was somebody embarrassing themselves and humiliating themselves like this. And if she was trolling, even, you know, more power to you, because it's great. Like, then it's really even, it's funnier, right, that she's trolling. But, you know, the fact that people are outraged, oh my God, you know, like breakdancing is something sacred. Anyways, let's get into these other memes here. Honey, you have to finish your Ukraine before you can have any Iran. It's almost like it's a ritual or something, but that's just a conspiracy theory. They're all doing the gold eye here. Iman Khalif names J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk in cyberbullying lawsuit after winning gold. This caption was, you can't unsee it, right? Taylor Swift. So there it is. We got this picture of her, right? There she is. Like, this is what's on Twitter now. Every Olympic event should include one average person competing for reference. And so that's kind of funny. There it is there. Boom. Like, she just did it. Like, she just went for it there. And she got it done. And, you know, so ode to Raygun. I mean, not everybody can do this right here. So here it is. This just came in. I'm going to add this here. I'm in the editing process. Australian breakdancer is a disgrace to b-boying, and here's why. You know, like, it's not like b-boying was held in high esteem, right? I mean, yeah, she's a disgrace to b-boying, b-girling, right? Like, she's a b-girl, right? Like, okay, yeah, sure, she's a disgrace to be. Is that such a bad thing, right? The majority of people are a disgrace to b-boying or b-girling. You know, the majority of people can't break dance, right? And the ones that can, it's not that great of a thing, right? You know, it might be, you might put a lot of work and effort into it, and, you know, you look kind of cool back in the 80s and maybe the 90s to some extent. You know, it's like saying this person is a disgrace to hula hooping, right? It's some fad that, for the most part, you know, its best days are behind it. Okay, so today's Friday, August 16th. And I started this video yesterday. And somebody left a comment saying, I think Corey Feldman and Raygun should get together and do some sort of joint exercise. But let's start here.
I could speak all afternoon about the person that I am standing on this stage with.
Oh, okay, I've showed you this video so much, I'm not going to do it now, because I think this video is going to be long anyway. But there is a moment where Cory Booker is confronting Joe Biden, and Joe Biden said he has the support of the only African-American senator, and they're like, no, you don't, there's two of them, and I'm the second one, and Kamala laughs at his incompetence. Of course, there's a time that he said, you gotta punch at, he was asked about domestic violence, and he said, we have to keep on punching at the problem. And she's laughing at him, smirking at him. But she knew he was senile, is my point. Back when she was a candidate in 2019. They all did, right? And they couldn't believe he was winning, or he was leading. He was the front runner at 20%. And, she's faked it for these 4 years, and she's waited for this moment, right? When, she knew he was, she would have taken the vice presidency no matter what, because she's that much of a knee pads opportunist. She takes whatever she's like a scavenger, right? She's taking whatever bits of scraps she can get, and she's picking a dead carcass here. And she might end up doing that all the way to the presidency. It'd be kind of an epic, well, I don't know. She's so annoying, but her being presidency is her being president is I'm turning the whole thing into even more of a joke than it already is. Woo! See, they don't get this kind of love naturally. Trump does, but Trump does it by being so hated by the other side. Trump does it by just being Trump, right? And he's shameless and he's deceiving his people, but he inspires this kind of reaction. It drives him nuts that they're forcing this reaction, because people don't love Kamala like that. They didn't like Biden like that, right? They mostly dislike Trump, right? Because Trump is the key figure. Trump is the one that brings the energy. But they're pushing this, over enthusiastic crowd, which is hilarious because it's not real, regardless of AI or CGI or any of these things. They have to create this noise, and it's over the top, right? But Trump, of course, faking his own assassination attempt. He has nothing to say about this because the whole thing has become stagecraft. Woo! 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 Oh my God, you're so great, Joe! Woo! You're so great. He had to withdraw because he's senile. This was a medical withdrawal. It wasn't a withdrawal because he sucks so bad at president, which, people will say that's true. And he did suck so bad as president. But it was because he's mentally incompetent, right? And he's still president. So why are you cheering? This guy, he has Parkinson's. At least there's some sort of cognitive breakdown here. Joe.
Our extraordinary President Joe Biden. Today we take the next step, thank you, Joe, forward in our fight.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Just stand there, Joe. Thank you, Joe. Okay, don't poop your diapers, Joe. Don't poop your pants, Joe. There's no Joe.
We believe deeply every senior in our nation should be able to live with security, stability, and dignity.
This guy right here, depends, free depends, reach under your seat, free depends for everybody.
And so in the United States of America, no senior should have to choose between either filling their prescription or paying their rent.
Right, Joe?
That's
right, Joe?
Subject of today. Because we know for far too long, far too many of our seniors have struggled to afford their medication. And as a result, seniors...
She's so caring, you're so concerned. All right, so she's introduced this guy here. Let's get him up here. Let's get this, let's march this corpse up here.
Saving medications, and now to announce the result of those negotiations. It is my eternal and great, great, great honor, I have to tell you, to serve with this most extraordinary human being and American and leader, our President, Joe Biden.
Yeah, so he's bummed, right? He's really pissed off. So we know from his earlier statement, I'm going to go back to his thing with Kamala. That's just, I just want to frame this and you'll give this a reference point, right? But we know that this guy is pissed off, right? Like, he has no idea why he isn't running for president. And he was very stiff with Kamala there. She gave him a wonderful, like, oh my God, he's so great, kind of, like a, slobbering introduction. And he's completely stiff with her. He didn't snoozle her, he didn't grope her, he didn't sniff her hair. He didn't do the stuff he normally does. He's usually pretty pansy, right? But he's really stiff. Of course, he's stiffer now anyway. He's just stiff. But he's really pissed off. And here's another example. So he blamed Nancy Pelosi. He said that he was even with Trump in the polls, and for his, he still believes that he should be running for president. And so he's going to die a bitter, grumpy old man. Like, this is kind of the great part, because he's going out, and he was forced out, and like it's gonna bother him till the day he dies. Like, as much as he stays conscious, his mental capacities are breaking down. He's gonna die angry and bitter, and it serves him right because he sucks. But this is an indication here.
Bidenomics continue. Bidenomics continue. Vice President Harris.
You know what area called? The economy is going to continue with all those legislation and taxes working. In case you haven't noticed, it's working.
How much does it bother you that Vice President Harris might soon, for political reasons, start to distance herself from your economic?
She's not going to.
You don't think she's going to?
Mr. President, Trump says you're
not there at the negotiating table.
We're represented by both the Qataris and the Egyptians. The negotiations are going on right as I speak. I just got off the phone.
And are you expecting the Vice President to differentiate? What's your message for Maduro?
Mr. Trump says he wants to make America affordable again. Your response?
So you ought to get a job.
When will the Vice
That's not the answer.
President hold a news conference?
He said that President Trump should get a job to make America. That'll make America more affordable if Trump gets a job. How's that the answer to the question, right? When Trump gets a job, it's going to bring down inflation.
The Vice President hold a news conference?
You have to ask her.
Can all concerned Sudan? Sir, Sudan.
Do you have any regrets?
Sir?
Do you have any regrets? Talking to you guys.
Sir, Joe Donnelly, the U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See, sir. Sir, Joe Donnelly, the U.S. Ambassador to the Holy See. Are you going to name a new ambassador, sir, to the Holy See?
So there you heard it. Axios reported that Kamala Harris wants to distance herself from Biden and his economic policy.
So Axios, which is HBO, I believe it's HBO, and they they're reporting, which of course she has to. The economy is a disaster right now, so Kamala has to do her best to distance herself from that economy, right? And so Biden was asked if when she's going to distance herself from his economy, how he feels about that. And he says she's not going to, but of course she has to, right? And so, like, he is not being let in on what's going on, right? Like, they're not talking to him about the way Kamala's going to have to campaign kind of against him. She's going to have to distance herself and separate herself from Biden, his disaster. And yet she has to make it look like they're still cool, right? Because she was waiting for this moment. Like, I don't think she did anything personally to dirty her hands in terms of forcing him out, right? Like, she just said all the right things, but she knows he's been senile forever. So this was part of her plan. She was waiting for the day when he just, his Parkinson's and his cognitive abilities were so, were so compromised that they were going to force him out, and that she would be the only reasonable alternative, especially the way it happened. They waited. They could have done it 6 months ago, and there would have been a Democratic primary and a weakened Democratic candidate who would have came out of the primary, being exposed, because they would have been like a feeding frenzy, and they would have went all in on each other, and all these character flaws, all these political flaws would be exposed by their attacks on each other, and then they have to go up against Trump, and they'd all be tied to and be handcuffed to this senile candidate. But they waited. They could have done it in January when 70% of American people said he was too old. But they waited to the last minute so they would force Kamala without going through the electoral process and try to backdoor her into the presidency, right? Because that's the only way she could get it. And she'll be completely owned and handled by, Biden's handlers, right? And so this is like a scumbag thing to do. And it's great they're doing it because it just demonstrates this is the party that's supposed to be saving democracy. And they have a person who didn't receive any votes as their nominee. For she's never been voted, doesn't receive one vote for president, and now she's running for president. So it's like a wonderful thing that's happened. Is that Bruce Springsteen?
Well, love you guys too.
We love you.
I've been waiting for this moment for a long, long time. First time I sponsored a bill to let Medicare negotiate the price of drugs was in 1973 as a freshman senator with a guy named Frank Church from the state of Idaho. Folks, I have an incredible partner. The progress we've made, she's going to make one hell of a president.
Woo! He's slurring his speech. He's slowing down. He's slurring his speech. Again, they're going to roll him out here, which is a big mistake because he's senile. He shouldn't be president, right? But they kind of have to. And, he won't have probably the senior moments he's had in the past because he'll do little 10-minute spots here and there. But you never know, right? But he's still, the way he presents, the way his affect, he clearly is gone, right? He's going to have gaffes, continue his gaffes because he always has gaffes. And, he's going to be confused because he's always confused, right? And it's just like a matter of a race against time because there's still some months left, right? We're only in August. There's a September and October, part of January, right? And so, the longer he stays out there, and he's deteriorating quick, is what I'm saying, right?
And Judy, thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, Judy.
It's a really one for
That fucking Judy was awesome.
Too many Americans. People like my dad used to lay in bed at night when they lost his insurance as the company he worked for, staring at the ceiling, literally. And you've all experienced, people have.
Literally, he's staring at the ceiling.
Experiences. Wondering what in God's name happened if my wife gets breast cancer, or if I get sick, or my children get seriously ill. What happens? What in God's name? How can we pay for the drugs, prescription drugs?
In God's name, how are we going to pay for the drugs?
Serious. These are the discussions.
You're serious. It's just discussions we had. As he stared at the ceiling, we would say on these discussions, in God's name, how am I going to pay for the imaginary cancer, my breast cancer my wife might get in the future?
Know it? Do we have enough insurance? Can we afford the medical bills? We'll have to sell the house to get a second mortgage. There are discussions that took place in my house and your house. Kamala and I both get it.
We both get it. She grew up in the posh Silicon Valley with her her two academic parents, and she gets it.
We know it isn't just about health care. It's about your dignity.
Yeah,
it's about your dignity.
Woo, it's dignity, woo.
It's about peace of mind.
Peace of mind, woo.
It's about security.
It's about security.
It's about taking care of your family.
It's about taking care of your family.
It's about giving folks just a little bit more breathing room. That's all. Look, I believe that health care should be a right, not a privilege in America.
Woo. All right, so you're going to have universal health care, or you're putting that on the ballot, where people are going to have to pay 60% of their wages and 60% of their income in taxes to pay for the universal health care that, Medicaid for all, right? That's not going to happen, right? They could do that under Obama. And it should be that, but the medical system is so bad. For me, I do everything to avoid it, right? Allopathic medicine. And, this is I mean, is she campaigning on that? Because it's not, Obamacare isn't that, right? And Obamacare it gets more expensive and worse as time goes on.
This is a fight all of us have been fighting for a long time, taking on Big Pharma. We pay more.
So they must have taken some of his gaffes out here.
For prescription drugs. It's not hyperbole. We pay more for prescription drugs than any advanced nation in the world. I could take you out on Air Force One, and if you have a prescription from a drug company in America, and fly you to Toronto, Canada,
Yeah, can we all do that? Can we all go on Air Force One and go and get our prescription drugs filled in Canada?
Paris, France, try to Belfast, anywhere around the world, and get you the same prescription filled for the same company for 40 to 60% less than we pay for.
So you're saying Big Pharma is evil, right? But didn't you make the bloop mandatory?
Here.
Ooh, that's boo boo.
Too many Americans can't afford the drugs they badly need for life and death. So they skip doses, cut pills in half, forego prescriptions entirely because the prescription drugs are totally unaffordable.
What kind of drugs? Prescription drugs?
The woman you all met, the nurse you just met, she paid $900 a month. Well, guess what, man? She's going to pay nowhere near that. $9,000. She's going to pay, guess what? Beginning January, every single prescription drug she has, including, God forbid, if she needs a really expensive drug like a cancer drug. Maximum she ever has to pay is $2,000, period.
Woo! $2,000 a month. Woo! We can all afford that. Woo! You just said $2,000 a month. Like that's $24,000 a year, right? In prescription drugs.
We'll take the insulin needed to treat diabetes.
Okay, so they must have cherry-picked this thing to get rid of some of his gas, but you can see how much he's slowed down, and he's just cognitively breaking down more and more. So it's a race against time for him. I want to move on to the next thing here. Okay, so this is a very telling part. This whole thing is very telling because the CNN video is 9 minutes long, right? Now, why not cover all of it? Because you're throwing it up on YouTube. And they edited it out. It wasn't like they didn't cover it. They had the whole thing on CNN, and they went back and edited parts out. You know, when CNN was trying to take down Joe Biden, they weren't editing out his gaffes, right? So there's a brief period where they were actually covering this guy for the senile MNFer that he's been all along. And that's very telling. The other thing is the audience here. So I went back and found, this is on ABC News, where they have the whole speech, which is double the length. So, they didn't edit out the good parts, right? And so I'm not going to cover all of it because, I have to move on to these other things. But watch this woman right here. Like, Joe Biden's going to say something he said, I don't know, hundreds of times, right? And about healthcare. And she's going to react like an infomercial, excited infomercial, paid stooge, paid shill.
I believe that health care should be a right, not a privilege in America.
Yeah, look at her point. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's just not her, it's everybody. But, these people are all paid, they've heard this before because if they're this much fans of Joe Biden, they've heard the speeches before. He says it over and over again. That's a line I've heard myself, 30, 40 times him say. That he believes that healthcare is a right, not a privilege. I mean, he's been saying that for years. And, people aren't really all that concerned about healthcare right now. They're concerned about the economy, which Kamala is going to have to crap all over him at some point and come up with a new plan. The Biden economics is a failure. So, they're strapped to the economy, which is going to, it might not be hurting them now, but when it gets closer to voting time, it's going to kill them. And the economy is a disaster. And they can say all kinds of things about the economy being great or improving. But as long as it's, people are paying more and there's inflation, which they feel, they can say inflation's being reduced. But people know, like when they go to buy anything, that the inflation is killing them, right? Because they're not making more money. And it's not going to go away. Like when you're paying 20%, 30% more for things, than you did before, and that you don't have enough money, that you used to have more money, or you had enough money to buy everything, and now you don't. That just stands out for you, every month. Like this thing that he says, right? His dad's staring up at the ceiling. They're all doing that because of his economic policies, and it's in the overall economy collapsing. It's not just on him; it's on Trump, but it's not on it's even before them. It's the debt-based economy, and the fact that we have it's insolvent because of the amount of debt that we have, right? And that's not going away. And they're always going to blame the last guy, like they did with Trump after COVID. The reason Trump lost, whatever you can say cheating or not, but the reason that it was even close was because Trump closed down the economy because they forced him to. But everyone blamed Trump. Everyone's going to blame him and Kamala for the economy. And so him saying his dad staring up at the ceiling is him just admitting that like he's screwed working class people over the same way his dad did. Because people just want to blame somebody, and it's always the last guy. So he gives a shout out to the governor here of it's in Maryland, and then he talks about being too old.
For the longest time, I was too damn young because I was only about 29 when I got elected. Now I'm too damn old. But I'll tell you one thing in between.
Like, why are you laughing at that? Like, why would that make you laugh, right? So this is, let's watch that again. So this is them using a complete, like almost a laugh track like situation, because that's not funny. Like, it's not funny. That's like a bad grandpa joke.
For the longest time, I was too damn young because I was only about 29 when I got elected. Now I'm too damn old.
Wow, what a zinger.
I'll tell you one thing in between. One of the finest, most decent men I've ever worked with. When I think of integrity, is Ben Cardin. Stand up, Ben.
Ben, stand up, Ben. Woo! Where's the enthusiasm they have? Who is this guy? Why are they so enthusiastic about this guy, right? Now, Trump's enthusiasm isn't like this. Like, Trump has a lot of enthusiasm, but, and Trump paid an audience when he first came out on his elevator announcement. Like, he had paid people there, right? But, Trump soon gained an audience because he was, he went full Trump, right? And people like extremists. Biden's a moderate, they say he's decent. People don't get that excited about a decent guy, and they don't know who the F he's talking about here. Like, he's pointing out people, and they're so enthusiastic about everything he says. It's like over-the-top enthusiasm that is fake, right? Like, it's an infomercial type audience. So then he says something here that's kind of hilarious.
Woo! I measure the people I work with by their integrity. He does what he says and says what he does.
He does what he says, which is a good thing, right? If you say something, you do it, right? That's good. But he says what he does? Listen to that again. That means he's bragging. He says what he does. He does something and he talks about it. He brags about what he does. Like, that's just goofy, right? Like,
I measure the people I work with by their integrity. He does what he says and says what he does. Look, folks, also, Nanette Barragan, for the longest time, she tried to pretend with me she was Irish, named Barragan. She's a great friend, and she's...
Like, he's mumbling, like they're laughing at his attempted jokes, but he butchered her name, right?
One of the great leaders in this country for the Hispanic community.
She's Spanish, so... She's Spanish and she's pretending to be Irish to get in good with them. Like, that was just weird. So they cut out a lot of this Joe Biden, like, goofiness, right? So, there's a clueless affect. He mispronounced America, which I'm not going to show you. I'm just kind of going through this quickly here. But now he's like, he just bumbles his way through this. He can't say the word prescription, right? Like, he's got marbles in his mouth. Or dementia.
Now, This is another really big deal. It means that Americans can save more money on from life-saving medications they need and deserve, and bring peace of mind. It's hard to explain. Kamala and I are going to keep fighting to lower the prescription drug costs for everyone, not just seniors.
What kind of drug costs? What kind of drug costs?
Mine. It's hard to explain. Kamala and I are going to keep fighting to lower the prescription drug costs for everyone, not just seniors.
This is lump sauce?
It's a fight that we have to continue. Oh.
He's not able to pronounce words. It's throughout the thing. Like he can't pronounce American and prescription. Here's the other problem with this, right? You know, I don't like the allopathic medical model, which I've talked about extensively. But this guy made the bloops mandatory, right? The rooster, right? He made it mandatory. But then he's always bashing Big Pharma. Like if Big Pharma is evil, like most people think it is, most people have a negative story about Big Pharma, whether it be overpriced prescription drugs or side effects or both, right? The side effects are brutal. And look at him. Just look at this guy, right?
To continue. Oh, but guess what? Surprise, surprise. Big Pharma doesn't want this to happen at all. The pharmaceutical industry last year spent $400 million lobbying the Congress to stop this. $400 million. Worked pretty well. They didn't get one Republican voting against them. They all voted for him. Republican allies stuck with him. And the ability of the federal government to negotiate lower drug prices was tried to be stopped.
Was trying to be stopped.
But Kamala and all of us in this room are going to keep standing up for Big Pharma.
So that wasn't even they said Kamala and I are going to keep on standing up for Big Pharma. But he butchered it, so you don't even know he got that completely wrong.
Allies stuck with him. And the ability of the federal government to negotiate lower drug prices was tried to be stopped. But Kamala and all of us in this room are going to keep standing up for Big Pharma. I fought too damn hard to yield now.
Okay, so he just said he stood up for Big Pharma and he fought too damn hard to yield now. So this woman keeps on wagging her fist. Woo! Like he just butchered it, but you're cheering. He just said he stood up for Big Pharma. And look, he's soaking.
We're not backing down.
We're not backing down.
And get this. You may have heard about the MAGA Republican Project 2025 plan.
Whoa. Whoa, thumbs down, bro.
They want to repeal Medicare's power to negotiate drug prices. Let Big Pharma back to charging whatever they want. Let me tell you what our Project 2025 is.
Woo.
Beat the hell out of them.
Beat the hell out of who? Beat the hell out of Republicans or beat the hell out of Big Pharma?
I mean it.
Get off my lawn, crazy kids.
In January 25, total prescription drug costs will be capped at $2,000, no matter.
Okay, again, they butchered the prescription drug costs here.
In January 25, total prescription drug costs will be capped at $2,000, no matter
Prescription
how expensive they are. And some are expensive as $12 a year, $12,000 a month, I should say. Kamala Harris and Democrats in Congress will make sure that $2,000 cap covers everyone, not just seniors as well.
Okay, so you get the idea, right? This is his, like, you know, he's got one thing to do now. Like, he's got one event to go to. I mean, they're completely managing this guy, and they're propping him up as best as possible with an artificial audience. And he still can't get through a sentence, right? He can't, like, he butchers everything. He's mispronouncing words. And this is him at his best, right? And so, like, hopefully there'll be some deterioration. I mean, we know there's going to be deterioration, but noticeable deterioration at some of these events. But even with that, the media is now pretending that doesn't exist. And Trump and, you know, those guys aren't covering it, so he's going to get a pass. But we get to see it. Like, it's just great for us because we can see it, right? We can see that they got a senile president, and he can't be making decisions because he doesn't have the cognitive ability, right? And he's bitter and angry, and he feel like he's been robbed, which is great. So this is called Kamala Harris and Tim Walz on tacos, music, and the future of America. This is on Kamala's official YouTube channel, right? So they're putting this out there, this contrived fake piece of crap. I mean, she's not doing interviews. She's being hidden away. You know, she's been basemented. And they have a fake stage audience, right? Like, that's how bad they think she is. Because she's not senile. Why are they hiding her away? I mean, they're like literally in the basement here.
I talk about it being halftime in America. We're a touchdown down. And I kind of like the idea of being a little bit behind.
Well, I'm looking at Coach Walz right now. I'm looking at Coach Walz.
Detroit, Michigan, like that. I mean, this is going to be horrible.
Like I have white guy tacos and
What is
like
that,
black.
like mayonnaise and tuna? What are you doing?
Mayonnaise and tuna. White guy tacos. She thinks white guys eat put mayonnaise and tuna in taco shells. That's what Kamala thinks white guy tacos means. I don't know what my white guy tacos mean for Tim Walz, right?
Much ground beef and cheese.
That's
and,
okay. Do you put any flavor in it?
No.
Oh.
Here's the deal. No, they said to be careful and let her know this, that black pepper is the top of the spice level in Minnesota, you know.
I'm the first.
Okay, so that's silly. You know, I've been to Minnesota, and beautiful cities, but they're modern day cities. You know, they have professional sports teams, and they have all the ethnic, I mean, there's whatever ethnic people that are there, they're going to have some restaurants for those people, right? There's going to be Indian restaurants, there's going to be Thai restaurants, there's going to be Chipotle, you know, there's going to be Mexican restaurants and things like that. There's going to be, you know, ethnic food. And he's saying that Minnesotans just use black pepper. Like, Minnesotans don't have basil. Like, what are you talking about, right? Like, it's just, like, stupid. Oh, I'm a white guy, we just use black pepper, right? Like, what are you talking about? You can't throw some taco seasoning? I mean, they come in kits, right? You can get kits. There's actually organic kits, too, that you can get that have taco seasoning and salsa built right in. But it's not that hard to, you know, put chili powder and some other stuff together, onions and whatever it is. We just use black pepper. I don't use any spices and season. You know, white people food, when you think about English food, they used to have no spices. I mean, their food was horrible. And then they conquered India. And they had the access to all these wonderful spices in India. You know, they didn't have tea in England until they conquered India. You know, they can't grow tea in that part of the world. And now it's a staple of their, you know, I mean, tea's a big thing in England, right? But they adopted these things. As you had cultural exchanges, you have these things come into your country. Everybody has, like, spices. Practically everyone has a spice rack. Like, you know, just use black pepper, I don't know. Like, it's just so fake, but it's also so strange and just not true.
First vice president, I believe, who has ever grown chili peppers.
Well, trying to expand my food.
But you're the first vice president that's ever grown chili peppers? Wow, you're amazing. Like, the vice presidents used to all have farms. Like, back in, you know, I mean, certainly the founding fathers, they were all agrarian. And so you think you're the first one to grow chili?
Knowledge.
You know, we've got some cantaloupes. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, I called you,
I was hoping maybe
Tim.
we wouldn't have to.
I called you.
That's that laugh right here, right? Look at that.
You know, we've got some cantaloupes. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, I called
I was
you,
hoping
Tim.
maybe we wouldn't have to.
I called you,
Like,
Tim.
what is that? That's so effeminate. It was weird.
Yes.
You didn't answer, Tim.
I know.
What happened?
The most important call of my life. It popped up, and we didn't recognize the caller ID, and it went.
Okay, so who's we? We didn't recognize the caller ID.
It went to voicemail.
Hi, this is Jim. I'm not able to answer.
The cackle's back. Okay, so what they're saying here is what they're doing is an inauthentic moment because there's camera and it's staged, and they're going to edit it, right? They're not doing this live, and if they're doing it live, it's still contrived. The tacos talk they're doing, you know, Tim and Kamala in their taco talk, like that could be they're trying to do this like a podcast, right? To be edgy, But we know what happened here. Now, it's no longer on Kamala's channel. She got rid of this thing.
Hi, this is Tim.
Okay, so he's got a camera recording, and it used to be widescreen. It just wasn't, this phone type of thing. They're trying to make it look organic now by making it just into a phone. But it used to be the whole screen, right? It used to be all of it. And so he's sitting there waiting for a phone call with a camera on. And they didn't have the camera on her unless he already had a camera on him and was prearranged. We're going to call you in 5 minutes. Make sure we record it because we're going to make a video about it. That's what was happening. But she's saying that he didn't pick up. He said, "No, I didn't know who the caller was." We didn't know who the caller was. What are you talking about? You're sitting there waiting for a call from somebody, from Kamala. You didn't have her number? I mean, this is incompetence, right? Like, you can't even stage something right.
It's Kamala Harris. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Madam Vice President.
Listen.
So, this is just, let's go back here.
You didn't answer, Tim.
I know.
What happened?
The most important call of my life. It popped up, and we didn't recognize the caller ID, and it went to voicemail.
Like, this is the kind of guy he is. Like, his mental competence. He's already a JoJo Magoo. This guy's he got another Magoo here. Like, he couldn't execute. Or we're going to call you. Make sure you video it. I don't know what this number is, so I'm not going to answer. It might not be. I hope this person hangs up so that Kamala can call me. Right? Like you're a moron. Like what?
Yeah, I'm not able to answer.
There you go.
Thank you.
The cackle's back too. They're trying to get rid of the cackle, but they brought it back.
Hey, Tim, it's Kamala. I really want to talk to you.
It is an amazing privilege for me. Also, I'm excited. I just want to be part of the excitement that you're generating.
Well, we're doing it together, buddy.
fun.
We're doing
Buddy, come on, pal. They're like is this like a poker table? They're like in the basement? Is it somebody's man cave?
it together. How are these last
Like,
couple?
what is this thing? This room with 3 staircases is down here. Is this like a lower level living room or looks like a poker table?
Days been for you.
I can see where the energy comes. America is a hopeful country.
Indeed.
People are excited.
It's a hopeful country. We're so hopeful.
Every one of those.
Look at the kick he does. Whoa. Do the kick.
The energy comes. America is a hopeful country.
Indeed.
People are excited.
In every one
Boom.
of those
Do the kick.
groups of thousands, sometimes over 10,000 people, you've seen exactly who we are as
Look
Americans.
at the size of these crowds. Look at how excited they are.
Yeah.
People from rural areas, urban areas, of every stripe and size and
There's people with stripes there. They got stripes. They got prisoners out there.
background. This is who
No, those
we
are zebras, Kamala. You have to roll out zebras to bray so that it makes it sound like they're excited.
are as America, and we're
Yeah.
all in it together.
Yeah.
And in this campaign, the only way we win is to keep the pedal to the metal for these next many, many days that we have.
She just string like 6 cliches together.
So, Tim, what's your relationship to music?
Yeah. For me, the transformational piece of music was Bruce Springsteen's "The River,"
Okay.
which is a journey. You know all the tracks.
Yeah.
And then when
Oh my God. He's trying to be such a white guy. Like they're really pushing him being a white guy, right? White guy tacos and Bruce Springsteen.
guy, my first car, it's a summer 1980, been saving up. I buy a 1973 orange Chevy Camaro, got an 8-track player in it.
Oh, wow.
Previous owner left Bob Seger's Night Moves in there.
No way. This is some white guy music from the Midwest, right? This is kind of Midwestern Pennsylvania and Michigan, Wisconsin music that they want this white guy to push because they might not be comfortable voting for Kamala Harris.
I listened to it, and it's kind of the soundtrack of my life of Detroit's own Bob Seger. But what's really great about this is I have a 79.
Look at her. Look at her face. Look at her. Look at her frickin' face.
And International is
Let's
my
go back. Watch her nod her head here.
its own Bob Seger. But what's really great about this is I have a 79 International is my car. It's got an 8-track player in it. I have the very 8-track to this day.
You're kidding me.
No, but how about you?
I grew
You
up.
got an 8-track player? You got an 8-track player, right? You're not even iPodding it. Like there's the 8-tracks are the worst possible thing, right? 8-tracks were you couldn't fast forward the thing. Like 8-tracks were the size of a VHS tape. So these are some 8-track players. I had one like this. If you wanted to move the track to the next track, you hit this frickin' fucking detonator here, right? Like I had something similar to this. And you had to listen to the whole song. You couldn't fast forward, something like that, right? But you would, this is a big giant 8-track that you'd have in your car. And you'd press the button and it would go down, would go to the next track. See, there's a big number here. That's on track 1. That's on track 2. So if you don't want to listen to the whole track, you'd hit the detonator and push it forward to the next track. And these giant cassettes here, right? Imagine having, a car full of those things, right? This giant player, and it was, it was like tape. It wasn't, just horrible. And he's got that in there. Cassettes were so much better, right? And you know what's better than cassettes? CDs. You know what's better than CDs? Bluetooth, right? Bluetooths. And he's got it. Isn't like 8-track was like a vinyl record where people say that vinyl has a better, people have this romanticism of vinyl and maybe it is better. Like I have sensitive ears and I can't tell the difference. And I'm not, vinyl was its own nightmare. 8-tracks were in a sense better than vinyl. Vinyl isn't digital. So it's silly for him to still have this 8-track player.
Is my car. It's got an 8-track player in it. I have the very 8-track to this day.
You're kidding me.
No, but how about you?
I grew up.
You're shitting me. You got to be shitting me. You still have an 8-track player? Like you just admitted that? You want people to vote for you? Like that kind of decision making? You can't pick up the phone when the vice president is calling you to be her vice president, right? When it's a staged event where they're filming it and you already know ahead of time she's supposed to call, and you can't pick up the fucking phone, and now you eat your tacos without any seasoning, and you think black pepper is the height of the seasons. Everyone else has got. You can buy like a package of all these different seasons, right? All these different spices, and so like it's just silly, right? And you got an 8-track player, like, and you're calling the other guy weird, right?
Grew up, so all these albums here. I mean, Aretha. My mother had every Aretha album, and like
she had Urethra.
Christmas gift to my mother, her birthday gift was always like, what's the latest Aretha Franklin record?
Okay, so you guys realize you're going after young people who are already pissed off on your policies towards Palestinians, and you're talking about Bob Seger and Aretha Franklin. Like this is your music, like this is what you listen to. Like you have no modern day, any kind of modern day music that you might like. I don't know, something that would be maybe like rap or something.
It's on vinyl in your house as a background.
All of it. Wow. All that and Stevie, and then Miles.
So she has vinyl and he has 8-tracks. Like, do you have any modern day technology, you guys? No wonder you couldn't answer the frickin' phone, right?
And my dad loved jazz, and so it was Miles, it was Coltrane. One of my personal favorite musicians for when I was younger was Prince. Oh. And of course, from your estate.
Yeah.
And
Prince was great. Remember when he was like couldn't be Prince? He was the artist formerly as Prince, and then he was Prince again. Remember when they did like an Illuminati sacrifice, a blood sacrifice, and there was all this elevator stuff, and he died in an elevator, and elevators take you to hell, right? Stairways take you to heaven, and elevators take you to hell. I did a whole thing on this years ago. That whenever they talk about an elevator, it goes straight to hell. There's a movie called Hell, or it's called The Devil, which is featured an elevator, and the 666 in the elevator. But but what about your mom, Kamala? Right, your mom was Indian, and I know she grew up in India. You didn't watch any Bollywood movies. You don't have any kind of, she's talking about African American music like that's her culture, but her mother, she lived with her mother. Her mother had primary custody when she was younger, very young. Her dad, they got divorced. So here it is here. By 1970, the marriage had faltered, and Shamala moved back to California with her 2 daughters. The couple divorced when Kamala was 7. So she had very little influence in terms of her dad. The Harris family lived in several college towns. So, college towns are great, but they're, hyper liberal, and they're not real life, right? So their parents met at Stanford University, the very liberal and very prestigious. This is like an Ivy League school in California. It's one of the best California schools. And his dad was in the Department of Economics, where he's a Marxist, right? He's a communist. So her dad's a communist, which he doesn't talk about, right? And so they met in 1962 and married in 63. Kamala was born in 64. She's this exact same. They're both born in 64. So they're my age, right? So, like, I'm way cooler than they are, right? I'm just saying. Like, we grew up and we went to, we had the same we had the same time frame. And that guy's way older than me, and she's just, a California ditz. Harris family then lived in several college towns in upper Midwest, Urbana, Illinois, where Sister Maya was born in 1966, Evanstown, Illinois, and Madison, Wisconsin. That's where the Badgers are, right? See, he's teaching, and he's a professor, and he's going to these different schools. By 1970, the marriage was faltered, and Shyamala, I don't know how to pronounce that. I've seen that name before. Moved back to California with their 2 daughters. The couple divorced where Kamala was 7. A support group of friends of Shyamala, among them African-American intellectuals and rights activists in Oakland and Berkeley, influenced Harris girls critically. 5 years later, Shyamala accepted a research position at the McGill University School of Medicine and moved the daughters to Montreal, Quebec, where Harris graduated from Westmont High School, and then she attended, which is a private institution, right? So again, she's in all these college towns, and then she's in these college towns in Canada, where she ends up going to private school and high school, and then going to another private college for like a year or two, and then she goes to Howard University, which is a traditionally black college, right? And so, so there's that. Like, that's something that's not nothing. But in terms of her influence, it's her mom, right? Her mom is the big presence in her life. Her dad and her don't get along. I guess they're not talking now. And he's disgusted by her sellout ways, right? But you don't see her mom and her dad. Like, I don't know if they're dead or not or what they are, but you don't see them around. Like, we'll see if she gets sworn in, if her parents show up, and that'll be interesting as well. But it seems like they're hiding her mom away, and her dad doesn't want any part of her. So it'd be funny if he got out and talked with his Jamaican accent. But anyhow, her music influence would certainly be more than what she's saying, right? By saying Miles Davis and jazz and these other black musicians, she's embracing a narrative like that's the culture she came from. But the heavier influence in her life was Indian culture, because that's where she grew up with an Indian mom. Her mom came from southern India. She's a Brahmin, and she came from the city of Chennai, right, where the main ashram was that I stayed. When I stayed in India, I stayed around the Chennai area for 3 years, and I'm familiar with the Brahmin culture. And also, when I was in America, I stayed at people's houses. Sometimes I would travel, and I stayed at Indian people's houses, right? And there was a house I stayed at where the older Indian mom, they miss India so much, right? Everything's Indian inside their house. Like, they've tried to create India in America, these first-generation immigrants. And the woman, the mom, she was like probably, the mother, the grandmother, whatever, house, she was probably in her 50s. And she would turn the TV on to an Indian channel. There was a couple of channels with just Indian, East Indian stuff on it, content. And she would turn it on in the morning, leave it on all day. And it would just be blaring through the house, right? Bollywood movies and just all of it. Very busy. It's very busy TV if you ever see any of the stuff that they have. And culturally, India is so different from any other place in the world. The people are unique in the way that they dress and the things that they believe. And they're different from each other. There's 500 different languages like in the country, right? And there's, 6 or 7 major languages there, right? Like, every place has its, there's Hindu and there's English. And then there's Tamil, like people in the where Kamala's from speak Tamil. And then all these other Gujarati, they all have their local dialects, right? And some people only speak the one language. Some people speak multi-languages, right? But Kamala's mother would have influenced her. In fact, she does a thing with Mindy Kaling, which I've shown you, where she's cooking, food with Mindy Kaling because, that's what she grew up with, right? But she doesn't talk about it here. See, right here.
Hard. Okay, so what we're going to cook today is an Indian recipe.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
you are Indian.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't know that everybody knows that, but I find that wherever I go and I see Indian people at the supermarket, on the street, everyone's like, Kamala Harris is Indian, right? It's like the thing we're so excited about to have you running for president.
Yeah.
So we're both Indian,
Yes.
but actually we're both South Indian.
Yes. You look like the entire one half of my family.
Okay, thank you.
You do.
I've been telling people
You
we're
do.
related already,
Yeah.
so this is perfect. It's basically true. And so, were you raised eating South Indian food?
South Indian food, lots of rice and yogurt, potato curry, dal, lots of dal, idli.
Yes, idli. That's a deep.
Dal, lots of dal, because that's what, when you go to South India, this is what you eat, right? They're vegetarian, right? She grew up, I don't know what her mom was, but all these things are things that, you go there.
You raised eating South Indian food?
South Indian food, lots of rice and yogurt.
Rice and yogurt, they have this. They like buttermilk. Buttermilk's a big thing, right? But this would be part, like if you go to the ashram in Chennai, this is what you would eat.
Potato curry.
This is also dal.
Lots of dal. Idli.
Yes.
Idlis is a big thing, like for breakfast, right? Poha is something that I make, like,
That's a deep cut. Okay, so what we're
And India has just a ton of spices. It's probably the spice capital of the world. And, Tim Walsh saying that black pepper is as far as he goes. And so she doesn't embrace her Indian culture. Like, she was obviously heavily influenced more by her Indian side because her mom was Indian. She lived with her mom. And I know her mom had Indian friends. I mean, they're saying that she had African-American friends that helped influence her upbringing. But in reality, her mom was going to, the Indians just find each other. And her mom was cooking Indian food, right? Her mom wasn't embracing it. Like, they just don't do that, right? We'd have at the ashram in Molina, Georgia, we'd have these gatherings. And the kitchen was like a kind of a state-of-the-art. The guy who built there was a main building. It was cheaply built, but they built a nice kitchen because he ran a hotel. And it had all the kind of kitchen-style stoves and all these things. But they had just people's leftover pots and pans. And they had to cook for sometimes 1,000 people. Master Charji would come to the gathering in Molina, Georgia. And there would be two sets of people cooking. There would be American people and there'd be Indian food, right? And they put out both. And I love the food. The food came out great, right? 'Cause it was like home cooking. It was like people bringing in their home recipes. And, it was wonderful food. But the Indian food was sometimes too spicy for the Americans. And it was complete chaos. Well, it was, in the Sajmark system, we have this thing called boga, where you have, some skaras, which are impressions, and you have to burn those things off. You can burn them off like through a disease or, through some kind of negative experience, right? You go through a trauma, you go through a, car accident. These things are called boga, where it doesn't have to be that extreme. But there's a kind of funny guy there, one of the, people with a better sense of humor who I used to talk to. And his wife worked in the kitchen, and they nicknamed it the Boga Den because there was so much drama and conflict. And the Indian people, and the Indian moms particularly, would not eat American food. And so, they always had to have some Indian food. They wouldn't eat it, right? And it was a whole thing. Charji was like, you have to embrace the American culture, and, it made people feel uncomfortable. It was like a whole big problem, right? And so her mom had Indian friends. There's no doubt about it. And there are plenty of them, I'm sure, in the various places where she lived. There's Indian population in those places. And they went to do Indian things. So Kamala's biggest influence is being an Indian. And she barely talks about it, right? Because she wants to be known as black, right? He wants to be known as a white guy because he keeps on talking about being a white guy, right? They make it about, they're making it about, what do they call that? Identity politics. Like, they both are trying to embrace parts of themselves that they're not really like that at all, right? They're, upper middle class, rich people. He's trying to be a down-to-earth, high school teacher, coach, this guy, right? And she's trying to be, African-American. And neither one of them are really that, right? They're both elitist. She grew up in, she tries to present herself as going through difficulties and facing racism, which maybe she did to a certain extent, but she got on her knees in service to dude, right? Like for, knee pads Harris, so that she could get it into her political career after having lived in college towns and going to private schools and other things like that, right? Okay, so I'm editing. It's close to dinner time. I'm about to make Indian food myself. I'm making butter chicken and mung beans and paneer. My, things I make of Indian are that and poha, right? But, we used to eat Indian food all the time. And, of course, going to these gatherings in this ashram, right? But there's quite a difference in the places and the culture and the dialect that people have in India. And when you come to America, they will mostly find people that are from their area, that are in their caste, and people who are similar to them. And so it's very specific, right? But they find people who, they have a hard time adjusting to the American culture. And they wear these, these women wear these saris. The women have very restrictive clothing. They wear saris after they're married and these Punjabi suits beforehand, right? And there's a lot of, dress code stuff. Like we were in Georgia in August and July, and in September it was really hot. And of course, India. And we were told we weren't supposed to wear shorts. Like men weren't supposed to wear shorts because you weren't supposed to expose your legs and ankles. And just weird stuff like that. After a while, I was just like, I said, fuck that. That's stupid. Like, I did it for a little bit, but, like all the goofy stuff that the culture has, like all these cultures have. And that's what you're going to make people suffer in 90 to 100 degree weather, like it's just stupid, right? Another thing we were told is that, you weren't supposed to point your feet at people. They took it like, it's like giving people the finger, so. But I realized that they weren't as worried about offending Americans. Like there were things that were, Charji, the master at the time, was always talking about how when people would come to, like American people would come over to go to assess on a group meditation at somebody's house, and it was all Indian people, and the people were friendly in most cases, hospitable, but they were wearing Indian clothes and they were cooking Indian food, and you thought that you had to do all that shit, right? And you clearly didn't. In fact, there was one clown. This guy was always, this guy literally tried to stick his foot in his mouth because he was talking about how we shouldn't wear jeans, right? It's an American guy, right? White guy. And he was like a California liberal. And he's talking about you shouldn't wear jeans, and everyone starts laughing at him. And he turns around and Master Chargy's wearing jeans. Like Chargy would wear the clothing of the people in the country he would visit, right? Because he said, it doesn't matter. We're not here to promote a culture. We're here to promote spirituality. And so you have to leave your cultural biases and things behind, right? But, the strong cultural ties really hurt the growth of Saj Marg, this meditation in America. We all seen it, right? In Chargy's last visit here, he said the Indians wrecked the Saj Marg in America for all the reasons that I'm saying. They didn't embrace American culture and make Americans feel welcome, and that was a huge problem. And so the other part is these kids who grew up, these Indian kids whose parents came to America, grew up as Americans, and they wanted no part of the meditation. They wanted no part of India. They didn't want any part of the dress code. I mean, they're very rebellious, and it was, a huge disconnect because the American culture and the Indian culture are so far apart on pretty much all these different social issues and things like that, right? And so that's what Kamala grew up with. And of course she'd be confused because also she has a Jamaican father, which, and there's slave owner heritage where she's one of her ancestors was a slave owner that owned 200 plus slaves, right? And so like she has in terms of her genetic and ethnic makeup, plus growing up in Berkeley, California and Canada, she has a whole bunch of shit going on there, right? But anyways, let's get back to it.
He, in fact, I'll tell you, so my husband Doug and I'm more of a hip-hop girl. Yep. He's more of Depeche Mode.
Oh, yeah. Oh, about the same time.
Yeah, I'm sure you and you like this.
Again, do you have any music that's current that young people would know what the fuck you're talking about? Like the Depeche Mode's this, the end of the new wave from Britain. And like, what do you mean hip-hop, right? Do you mean like, Run DMC? Like, what do you...
Music.
Of course.
But Prince, in the Venn diagram of things, Prince, he and I love the same because, talk about how Prince was with that guitar, man. I almost know by heart every one of those songs.
I feel like a trip to Paisley Park is going to happen here if the staff
It's on my bucket list, I'll tell you that.
It's on your bucket list. Wow. You're just like everybody else, you guys. You're just a couple of Americans having an American conversation at an American table, being Americans. A woman of color and a white guy who has white guy tacos and listens to Bob Seger, and they both can agree that Prince is great. It's just a great conversation.
Tell me about your dad and his influence on you.
Yeah.
He served our country. You have served for our country for so many years.
Yeah. I was 19.
Remember when you lied about it? You said that you were firing weapons in war and you were never in war. Remember that?
Brother, I think, was eight or nine when he passed. He was a chain smoker, just addicted. They got a Korean War era, and that generation of men pretty stoic. After he died, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. She became our rock, and now she had to go out and get work because the medical bills broke her, and Social Security and Social Security survivor benefits. We're fine pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. We had no boots. That's the
we would have pulled ourselves up. We were barefoot. Me and my brother had to go to school barefoot. That's how poor we are after my dad smoked himself to death. My dad, he smoked himself to death. The next thing you know, I had no shoes. I'm walking around like Huckleberry freaking Finn. And,
And it's survival, literally.
It is survival. We all paid it back. So programs that are just fundamental to keeping people from dropping into poverty, but to live with dignity. You keep talking about that.
We got to help people get through a hard time. We can't have a country and policies that let people fall through the cracks.
Exactly. Like, you can't throw people in jail when their kids don't go to school because they're single moms and they're living in poverty. You can't do that. You can't bury people like that, right? You can't do that, Kamala.
I love what you have done with your life. You were coaching a high school football team that was winless.
Yes.
And you came in, and so they were clearly the underdogs.
And what happened? Yeah, it's a team, and I had great coaches with me, and we were friends, and we buckled down. And look, I was a fairly big school, but nobody wanted to play because they hadn't won. And this group of coaches said, first and foremost, we gotta build the team. We gotta
recruit these kids. We gotta start giving them. We gotta start paying these kids to play high school football. We gotta get them some boosters.
Find people. So we invited them in, and I'll be honest, the first year, we did not score a touchdown until the last game of the year. We got shut out in every game. My high score until the final game was my defensive tackle because we got a safety in one game. 2 years later, those kids won a state championship. That school has won several more since then.
Right.
Boom. You just turned it around. He's a winner. This guy's a winner.
You build culture. You build winning. Right. People want to be a part of it. And that's the excitement. That's the excitement of what it can be.
That's how I feel about our campaign.
Yeah, exactly. It's a winning culture. These guys are winners. This guy's a winner right here. He's not weird at all.
Our campaign is the underdog campaign.
Oh, yeah.
And with our joy.
So you're the underdog campaign. Why? Why would you be the underdogs, right? You're the incumbent vice president, and you're running against the most hated candidate in the history of politics, right? I mean, the virulence, there are 52% of the people say they'll never vote for this guy, right? You're running against Donald Trump, who's been, he's been all the things that he's done and all the things that people think he's done. He's viewed as a racist and, somebody who ran the country into the ground and a failure and, somebody who's incited an insurrection. I mean, he's what people believe, right? And that he's been charged with all these crimes against, women and other things and voter fraud and all the stuff and all these investigations and the legal issues he's had. And you guys are the underdogs? Like, how the fuck are you the underdogs? How bad was your administration that you're the underdogs now? How unlikable are you, Kamala? Like, how bad are you got to be to where you're viewed as the underdogs? So let me break in here. I'm editing. It's the next day here. It's Saturday, August 17th. I want to show you the rest of this wonderful conversation between them. But they've been pushing this narrative out there that, Kamala wants to move on from the divisive politics of Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And Trump can't let go of the petty stuff. And that narrative is starting to bite Trump in the ass. And so here's some examples of that. So Trump was in a good position when Joe Biden was old and senile, and then when he was going through the withdrawal process, he was in a good position, right? And they nominated Kamala, who should be easy pickings, but she isn't. And so we're going to get to this press conference later, but I'm just showing you these things now. This is, I'm editing this after. I've already done the press conference stuff about him talking about being shot, right? But he's slipping to where he's now losing in a lot of these swing states. He's losing ground. And the media is reporting, and mainstream media is reporting, that their Republican strategists and some of the people around him keep on telling him to stick to the issues and stop with the rhetoric. And I'll get into why he does the rhetoric in a moment, right? But this woman asked him this question here.
Mr. President, many of your allies who want you to win in November say your current strategy isn't working, that you need to stop with the personal attacks on Kamala Harris and deliver a more disciplined...
So you see that look he gave? That big fuck you look? Watch his fuck you look right here.
The personal attacks on Kamala Harris and deliver a more disciplined message. Do you agree? And also, you added more people to your campaign today.
Yep.
Is that a sign of a shifting strategy?
No, I think it's a sign of we want to close it out. We have great people. Susie is fantastic, as you know, and Chris is fantastic. They're leading it. Corey Lewandowski's coming in. He'll be, personal envoy, or he'll be at some level. They're going to be, they're doing a great job. Look, we've taken, with all of the abuse we've taken from the fake news media, all of this
The victim stuff here isn't working either.
horrific abuse we take. And all I want to do is make the country good. All I want to do is have strong borders and good education. We want to have choice for education. So important. So many different things. You would think it would be the other way. We rebuilt the military. We did so many great things. But that's the way it's been for Republicans, and I guess more so for me than anybody in history, and that's okay. Because we're leading in the polls. For the most part, we're leading in the polls. We were leading Biden by a lot. We're leading now. But I think when she's exposed, I think we're going to beat her by a lot more than we would have beaten Biden by, because he had a little group of people that have been voting for him for a long time. She doesn't have that. People don't know who she is. As far as the personal attacks, her, because of what she's done to the country, I'm very angry at her that she'd weaponized the justice system against me and other people. Very angry at her. I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a...
So this idea, I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. Dude, you're supposed to be winning a frickin' election, right? So let me show you the other piece here, then I'll explain this a little bit more.
Governor Tim Walz is out on the campaign trail today, and he's been saying that he believes that you want things to get worse so that you can campaign on it, that you're rooting for failure. What's your
Just the
response to that?
opposite. I wish I didn't have to do this. If our country were run by Democrats and it was run beautifully, where we were really being productive and everything else, I would have never done this.
This is a silly idea that somehow we know what a Trump presidency looks like, right? And the policies that J.D. Vance and a lot of these other people would put forward are very similar to Trump policies. The Republicans aren't all that different, the mainstream Republicans, and it's also what they can get done, what they can legitimately get done, right? All the Republicans are going to be hard on the border. They're all going to do things for the economy or whatever it is that's very similar to the other people. And a lot of the Republicans would have a better chance of winning because so many people hate this guy, right? And just like with Biden, both of them are saying, well, I'm the only guy who can do it. And, come on, be serious, right? So we'll come back to that in a second.
I wouldn't have done it if I thought I couldn't have won. I think I can win. I think I can win easily once they're exposed for what they are, which is, radical left lunatics, and that's what they are. They're going to ruin. She's going to ruin our country. Going to ruin our country. And
Okay, so let me explain this thing here. Okay, so I'm going to take Trump's reaction when the woman asked him the question when he gave her that fuck you look, and then when he's later on and said he's entitled to personal attacks, that people are talking to him about this, right? They're saying to him, don't do this, right? You can't do this. because, he shouldn't do it, right? There are two things at play here. So back when people said that Jojo Magoo was 70% said he was too old back in January, a couple of other things happened. Trump was polling at 52% of people were never Trumpers. They said they would never vote for Trump under any circumstance, 52%. Like, these were solid numbers. And these people were probably not going to change. So he has to win at least 3% of those people to get a majority back over. And, he's not going to do it with this bullshit, right? So there was that. But then also 70%, over 70% of people said they didn't want a rematch of Trump and Biden. And, that debate where Biden melted down and the stuff that happened afterwards was epic. But other than that, no one wanted to see this again. I didn't want to see it. Other than the Trump cult followers, everyone else was very happy with, we're talking about 70 to 80% of Americans would be happy just to have two brand new candidates, no matter how bad they sucked, and they would suck. At least it was new suck and not the same old suck. These guys were both too old and played out, and the people are looking for change. Like, people can see the trajectory our country's on is going in the wrong direction. And the divisive nature that both these candidates embraced, and both of them talking about, Biden talking about how they're fighting for the soul of America. If Trump gets elected, America is going to be done. And Trump saying the same thing about Biden even more intensely. People are over that shit, right? Like, people who are like the kids in a divorce, and they just wish their parents would stop fighting. And they don't want to listen to their parents bash the other parent. There's some kids who are on team dad or team mom, and they're pissed at one parent and blaming that one parent, and they're siding with the other parent. But for the most part, it's like the kids just don't want their parents to fight anymore. They kind of wish their parents would get back together. But even if they don't get back together, the kids just want it to be civil, and they don't want to be put in the frickin' middle, right? Pretty much all of us experience this either as kids going through a divorce, with their parents going through a divorce, or going through a divorce personally, or friends and relatives. And it becomes a real shit fight. Everyone else wants to get over it. Like, there's some people who are engaged, like the hardcore Trumpers and the hardcore Democrats, and they want to hear how bad the other side is. But people in the middle, people who are undecided, people who are, non-committable in terms of the parties, the swing votes, those people don't want to hear this shit. They're tired of hearing it. They're tired of hearing Trump whine about how he's being persecuted. They're tired of hearing about how bad Trump is from the mainstream media. And you can see that Kamala's campaign has told her to pivot. Don't be centered on Trump like Joe Biden was. Don't be focused on Trump. Because people are tired of that shit, right? They have Trump and Biden fatigue. They're tired of the left-right bullshit, right? And those are the votes that matter. Because the other people are all going to vote the same way. The passionate Democrats and the passionate Trumpers, they're not going to not vote. The Trumpers, even if they get pissed off at Trump, they're not going to leave him because they're desperately scared of a Kamala presidency. They want to see a change here, right? And Trump was actually sort of in the catbird seat going into this thing, right? He was, he was well ahead of the fucking polls, right? He was just doing better, the whole thing with Biden. And this is a year where people want change, right? There's times where people want to not rock the boat, right? So they come in and they'll stick with the incumbent because everything seems to be going well. But that's not one of those years. People are freaked out by the economy and immigration, and they're just over the Democrats, and they feel kind of lied to about COVID, other things, right? People who voted for Biden, or people who, voted against Trump, and, all these things feel disappointed in Biden and Kamala Harris' performance. And Kamala Harris owns all that shit now, right? She owns the Biden, the Biden failure. And so Trump, like, her saying that she's an underdog is because of that, right? So Trump was in a great position, and by just talking about the economy and immigration, and since Kamala is an unknown, she's a known but an unknown and not really all that likable, he could have done a much better job than he's doing. But the thing about Trump, and I've said this before, he's addicted to the love of the fans, the love of his supporters. And they want red meat. They want this, they want to hear that, the Democrats are the devil and liberals suck, and, they want to hear all that stuff. They want to hear how bad the liberals are, and they want to have somebody in authority to tell them that their beliefs and with the way they're thinking is correct. I mean, that's more than anything else. That's what they go to these Trump rallies to have Trump agree with them and pump them up on this, all us or them type. The liberals suck. We got to go destroy the liberals. We got to go destroy the Dems. That's what they want to hear. And Trump is addicted to the adoration and all these things that he gets from the crowd. He knows what they want to hear. And he's a flim-flam man, a salesman. He can't help himself. And he's desperate. Like I said, he wants their love. He wants their adoration. He likes the cult leader status, right? If he starts talking middle of the road kind of things, like, they want him to do that after the shooting. That was part of the deal. I will pull off the shooting, and it'll give you, a chance to tame down the rhetoric. And both camps, the Democrats and Republicans, kind of agreed to tamp down the rhetoric, but that fell apart. Trump said it lasted 8 hours for him. But he wanted the reaction from the crowd. He was supposed to rewrite his speech and change what he was thinking. And that's what these pundits were told. But Trump went back on that and then laid into the Democrats like he always does. And so, this is not going to win him the election, because that's not what the middle of the road what people want to hear. They're tired of that shit, like I said before. The people who, Trump has to win back votes that he got during the 2016 election. And he has to change the sort of narrative about himself. And he refuses to do that, him saying he's entitled to these personal attacks, right? Like he's entitled to personally attack her. Well, then don't win. Then be happy to be a loser, because that's not what a good politician does. A good politician looks to bring in other demographics. And to do that, he's got to tamp down on this right-wing bullshit rhetoric, right? And right now he's opened the door for her, and, her enthusiasm isn't dying down, even though some of it's fake, these staged things. And she's doing better in the polls. I mean, she's increasing, and she's like, I don't know if she's, if the election was held today, it'll be really tight, right? And she still has her convention to go through and some of these other things. I guess Kennedy's looking to sell his endorsement. There's some, I don't know if this is true or not, but they're saying Kennedy reached out to Kamala saying if she gives him some sort of a post in the government, he'll endorse her, right? So, we'll see how that goes. But all of a sudden, Trump looks vulnerable, and he pulled this same shit in 2020. He didn't tamp down on the right-wing red meat rhetoric, and his dopey followers who, are desperate for him to win, they're making him kind of do this for them. They can't possibly, say some things that disagree with their point of views or belief system, and they're also radicalized, the far right-wing, semi-truther, QB type people. And so it's almost like Trump's fucked in this situation. Like he can't do what's being asked of him, right? I mean, let's get back to this thing with Kamala and Walz. Tim Walz, let's get back to it. Okay, so I just want to add something briefly. Something just chased one of our chickens outside. I gotta go look at. But the liberals, when you look at Bernie Sanders, the radical left can't produce enough votes to come close to winning the presidency, right? The radical right can do a little bit better. But for the most part, you'd have to have candidates that were centrists. There were no radical right or radical left candidates. You had conservative candidates, right? But they had to be more in the middle. You could be a little bit more right than you can be radical left. But you can't be like a socialist like Bernie Sanders. And that's where the enthusiasm in the Democratic Party is, the radical left. And so the Democrats have to sort of disguise their liberal agenda, their liberalism. They can't go out there and just go full on and get the enthusiasm. The Bernie Sanders crowds were really enthusiastic, right? But the Democratic crowds weren't all that enthusiastic. Obama was able to create some enthusiasm because of his ability to public speak and some of these other things, right? But Kamala can't go radical left. But Trump consistently goes radical right. And that's where his most passionate supporters are, the people that love him. And so he has to do that, right? because he wants to be loved. And it's a weird thing because, they're all controlled. These candidates, they're all handled, but they're human beings. And they have their egos and they have their tragic flaws and all these things. And it seems like they were handing Trump this presidency with this narrative, and we'll get back to all of the things that were going down, the way that the Biden administration was being, viewed by the voters and the swing voters, and Trump's big moment with the ear thing and the gunshot, all these things. But Trump can't help himself, right? Because he consistently forgets that he has to win voters over. Trump has to bring in new voters. He didn't have enough voters last time. You could say they cheated him or whatever. Okay, then what's stopping him from cheating him this time, right? Like if you're playing a game where the refs are potentially going to cheat you, then you have to blow the other team out. Like you can't even make it close, right? And Trump is consistently doing things that makes it look like he's handing the election over. Like they want him to win, but he just keeps on shooting himself in the foot. And he's floundering now, and he's rattled, he's spiraling, and he just can't stop from doing it. Him saying, I'm entitled to personal attacks. Yeah, okay, then lose, right? Like it's just people are over that shit. Like you just make it about the issues. You could win on the economy, you can win on the border, but he can't help but throw his radical right people red meat. It's what cost him last election when he wouldn't deny the so-called white supremacists. And it's just not that hard. You throw people under the bus all the time. Loyal people Trump throws under the bus, and he wasn't willing to throw white supremacists under the bus because they love him so much, right? Like, and the guy just can't help himself. And so, despite all this stuff where things are rigged and it's staged, it seems like they want Trump to win, but he just can't. Like he can't deal with the fact that he doesn't have enough people to, win with his sort of whatever his, radical right rhetoric is. And, I don't know if he's also, this is his senility, but it's just who he is as a person. So let's get back into Kamala and this guy, Walz. This is really a must-see video, and I haven't even gotten to Trump's press conference yet. America is so, this is a barometer of how bad America is and how bad the world is and where people are at. Like, this is why we need a look at this woman, right? Look at this. It's like staged here, like the demographics of people here. You got a Hispanic woman, a black woman, and a white guy, right? Like they're just, all these things are, they're so contrived, right? Like where are these people's people? Are these three people together? Like why are these individual people? They don't have, these are all friendless people, right? She doesn't have any friends to come with. She doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have any friends. They don't have family. They're all just individual people that made it to the front row. Like it's silly. These are hand-picked people.
We also have to understand that we're still up against some forces.
Yes.
That are trying to divide our country.
What forces are those?
It pains me the kind of division and the stoking of divisions that has taken place,
yes.
Right? And when we can remind people and create a space for everyone to come where they see each other and say,
magic.
Hey.
It's the magic. It's the magic.
We're all in this together.
It almost feels like everybody's coming out of their house after a blizzard and, a Minnesota reference, and you shovel out, and then you start talking to your neighbors. Yeah. How was it the last couple of days or whatever it might be?
Okay, so the blizzard was then Biden, because it wasn't the Trump blizzard. Trump wasn't president. So you're saying you're coming out of a house and there's been a blizzard of division, and that division also involves Joe Biden, who talks about Trump constantly. What about the mainstream media that talks about Trump and Trumpers constantly and demonize them? So you're saying all these people, the mainstream media, the liberal media, and Joe Biden, they've created all this division, and you're coming out of the house and people are like, hey, we can all get along now. We're multicultural people that can all get along. It's all the negativity. We're not going to go there in the negative. We're going to, when they go low, we go high. Like, we already heard that shit before.
They're re-energizing, and they're looking for their neighbors. We keep saying, keep talking about.
They're looking for their neighbors. They owe money.
Of America, and we say, take care of your neighbor.
In the face of a stranger, when you're looking in the face of a stranger, you should see a neighbor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because exactly, that's what you should say to kids. If you see a stranger, think of them as a neighbor or a relative, and you can totally trust them, especially if they're offering you candy.
About crying on this when you talk about, look, a girl from Oakland, California, and a guy from out in Nebraska on there. And the number of people I watch just kind of nod and break into a smile. This exploiting the differences, it can't last. I talk about it being half.
The girl and a guy, a girl from Oakland, California, and a guy from Nebraska.
Time in America, we're a touchdown down because a lot of folks, it's easier to tear things down. It's easier to divide than it is to build. But once you start that momentum, once we come out and where we're at right now, people want to be part of something that's winning. They want to be part of something that's good, and they want to be part of something that everybody can be a part of. And I kind of like the idea of being a little bit behind.
Well, I'm looking at Coach Walls right now.
Oh, look at him. Look at Coach Walls.
I'm looking at Coach Walls.
Did you always know you wanted to be an attorney?
My parents met when they were active in the civil rights movement. I grew up around.
You talk about your dad being a Marxist economist.
A bunch of people that were, marching and shouting for justice. And
just us.
The heroes of that movement were the lawyers. Thurgood Marshall, right?
Lawyers are always the heroes. When people talk about any kind of a movement, they always talk about how the lawyers are the heroes.
They understood.
You hear what you just said? Lawyers are the heroes.
How to translate the passion from the streets to the courtrooms of our country. And they believed in the Constitution of the United States and the principles upon which it was founded. And that's where they then, in the courts of America, reminded us of the promise, right? And the ideals of our country, including equality, freedom, right? That's why I went to law school. But the other reason is when I was in high school, my best friend, I learned, was being molested by her stepfather. And when I
listen to his reaction to that. Like, what a weird thing to say, right? Like, this is like Joe Biden saying that Charlottesville is the reason he ran. Like, her best friend was being sexually abused by her stepfather, and she's like, this is her motivation to this day. Something that happened in high school. Are you still friends with her? Like, I mean, is she psyched about you talking about this? The national, listen, the whole thing.
Is when I was in high school, my best friend, I learned, was being molested by her stepfather. And when I realized what was happening, I told her, you have to come live with us. I called my mom.
This is why you guys should look for your neighbors. When you see a stranger, you should look for your neighbors.
I have to tell you, Tim, it was the first time that I realized how not everyone can take their safety for granted.
Yeah.
And what we should all feel is a sense of responsibility to protect people from harm.
Yeah.
So that's why I decided I want to be a prosecutor.
Wow.
And
so when you were in high school, your best friend said that she was being molested by her stepfather, and you immediately said, I want to be a prosecutor. Like, that's when you knew you wanted to be a prosecutor, right? Like, you wanted to prosecute criminals. And it wasn't those, it was like potheads and, people smoking pot and, parents who couldn't, make their kids go to school because of their economic, issues and things, right? They were just struggling to keep their head above water, and you threw them in jail. Like, just, so, fake and weird.
as a prosecutor, I prosecuted homicide cases. I prosecuted a number of different types of cases, but I specialized in child sexual assault cases. And one of the things I
Jeffrey Epstein
did was create a whole unit dedicated to focusing on children who are being abused and to ensure that they have dignity in the process and justice.
So you're rewriting all that stuff that you were going after the abusers and not parents who were. Your signature moment when she was on Matt Lauer, right? She didn't talk about that at all. Her two signature things that she's talking about. So this is from that. I'll show you this interview.
Week magazine, as San Francisco's first female African-American and Indian-American district attorney, Kamala Harris has received praise for raising conviction rates against violent criminals while creating innovative programs to reduce crime and prevent repeat offenders. Now she's out with a new book called Smart on Crime, a career prosecutor's plan.
Okay, so this was her book, right? So she's coming on. Again, she has these two plans that she talks about.
And other people say, wait a second, let's go to high school truancy because they're most likely to
So the things she talks about here is truancy.
Attention nationwide. Started out there, but it's being copied nationwide, called Back on Track. Right.
So back on track, and she talks about, truancy being a problem. These kids acted out criminally. She doesn't talk anything about going after sex offenders, right? So that's something completely new. Like, she wasn't running on that. She wasn't trying to build her career on that. She was running for attorney general here after she got, knee pads Harris, and she dated the guy 60 years old when she was 29, and he got her, 3 prominent jobs and made her career, right? When he was a married guy, bought her a Mercedes, right? All these things. And so look at him. Look at how sad he is.
There's so much work that we still have to do to make sure that children have a voice.
I mean, all those kids that are being abused in Washington, D.C. There's a thing called Boys Town. I think it came out of Nebraska. Like some kind of Boys Town. What was that? There was a whole scandal there, and these politicians were, abusing kids there. And it was in Washington, D.C., and the kids were coming from Nebraska. It was a whole thing, right? I forget whatever was involved. George W. Bush, or his father's George Herbert Walker Bush. The Des Moines Register published an investigation to Boys Town, the youth-focused charity in Nebraska, with of secrecy around sexual abuse allegation. The Franklin prostitution ring, right? It came out of Omaha, Nebraska, and the kids were shipped to Washington, D.C., right? There's a whole thing, the Franklin investigation. The accusations primarily centered on Lawrence E. King, who ran the defunct Franklin Community Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska, and alleged that King hosted lavish parties at which minors were sexually abused. King was a rising figure in the Republican Party before the investigation and owned multiple houses in Nebraska, along with a house in Washington, D.C., which he rented. So this was all tied there, and they had these parties in Washington, D.C. It was a whole big scandal. Bush was involved, the old senior Bush.
Me, that's kind of with me. Get in as a teacher.
Yeah.
It's about the kids and wherever you teach.
Right.
Once I had my own children, it became so clear to me, and I think it made me a really good teacher.
Yeah.
That child who came through the door was somebody's most special thing in their life.
Exactly, absolutely.
Thinking of a parent dressing their little one up and sending them off to school so proud of them, I wanted to come through that door and just lift them up, that sense of...
Yeah, it sounds a lot like Joe Biden. Like, do you want to snoozle him and sniff him? And
the service. It's interesting, 2 different parts of the country, 2 different lived experiences, but all coming to that same goal of everybody getting a fair shot.
Well, I have to tell you, Tim, even though you and I grew up in different parts of the country, you remind me of the people I grew up with.
How the fuck does he remind you of the people you grew up with, right? How does this guy from Nebraska remind you of people that grew up in the Berkeley, California region and in Canada, right?
Frickin' folks, plain speaking.
Yeah.
People who know the difference between right and wrong.
Those are the kind of folks I grew up with.
And love thy neighbor in the most authentic and true way.
Oh my God, it's amazing, this kumbaya moment.
Those are the folks I grew up with, and I know that's who you are, and I'm so glad we're doing this together.
I'm proud to be with you.
Boom. Oh, that was great. That was fucking great. That was so, like, icky and freaking despicable and fake and inauthentic and weird and all. I mean, it was just, that was a wonderful thing they just did there. More of this. I want to see more of this. I want to see more conversations like this. I want to see more podcasts or whatever the fuck you were trying to do here. I want to see more of this because that was awesome, right? I don't know how Trump's going to top it, but I know he does. He doubles and triples down on his fake Ketchupgate, so we'll start off with that if I can find it. Okay, so this just came in. Today's Saturday, August 17th, Breakdance Mountain. So before we get to the press conference with Trump, there was, this is Donald J. Trump, and this is his thing with Elon Musk. And there's some images. And then there's this, right? They're playing the Saturday Night Fever, whatever song, Staying Alive. And these guys are like, look at them go, right? And Trump posts this thing. Only after Elon Musk posted it. Let me show Elon Musk here. Elon Musk posts a bunch of shit. He's just like a big-time poster. And I meant to get this yesterday. This was supposed to be part of the weird stuff I showed you in the beginning of this video. Like how weird, how like incompetent, strange people are. He's got this post here, right? I want equity, be honest. I want equal incomes, be honest. I want communism, thank you. I don't think she wants communism. I don't think she wants anything. I think she just wants to be president. And whatever they tell her to do, she'll become, right? Whatever they want Kamala to be, she'll be. She's going to be completely handled. You know, that was the price of this. Look how much she posts, right? So much more than, well, obviously Trump's just back on the thing. There they are. Okay. Haters will say this is AI. And so, they both post this thing. They both post it, right? Like, your interview sucked. And I just covered some of it. Like, and it was, 2 hours long, and it was brutally bad. And Elon Musk slobbering over Trump. And, this is just, like what you guys doing a victory dance? You're lying about like 1 billion views, which is almost like, it's impossible. There's not 1 billion views out there, right? And so you guys are putting this out there like this is, what? Like this is your victory dance? You guys like completely it was a failure. It wasn't a success. And, what is going on, right? Okay, so he goes off. This is 1 hour and 24 minutes long, but 40 minutes of it, he's just bashing Kamala. And so I don't know if I'll go back and look at that. It's so long. But he has Folgers here and Maxwell coffee and honey buns of oats. What is that? Whatever that is. And he's got maybe some bacon here and some sausage and shit. Like, what is this? He's got like is he hawking frickin' non-nutritious food, right?
Thank you, President Trump. You've spoken very passionately about how God saved your life, and I'm wondering, have you put much thought into why God saved your life? As in, for what purpose has he been shielding and protecting you?
Okay, so this must be somebody Trump put in the audience as a shill.
So, I don't know if you heard the question. You've spoken about God saving your life, that I've spoken passionately about it, and something happened because that was a miracle. It
was a miracle.
That way. The audience was massive, and it was in front of me. I never have that particular graph. That was a graph on, as you all know now, that it's very, I think everyone knows it very well, but it showed the great numbers on illegal immigration. It was the lowest point we've ever had. And it was one that I use less than 20% of the time. It's always
Okay, so, again with this story, remember he was at the convention. He said it was just so painful, the event, they was only going to talk about it once. And he's talked about it every day since at every place he's gone to. This is all he talks about, right? And everything he says can be debunked, right?
At the end of the speech, not at the beginning of the speech. And it's always on the left side, not the right side. And yet, for some reason, I called it. It's not on a teleprompter. I do things largely without a teleprompter, frankly, because it's hard to hold an audience if you're going to go for 1.5 hours or 2 hours reading a script. And I just talked about it, and I moved to my right, turned sharply to my right, ping.
Okay, we know that didn't happen. So here, he's already turned.
And that comes right from the government services, comes right out of Border Patrol.
So this goes on for 36 seconds before he's shot. And this is not, he had actually turned earlier, right? So this is 38 seconds into it when the shots are fired, right? 39 seconds. So for at least 40 seconds, he had already turned. So that's a lie, right? Lie number one. You're a Trumper. He just lied to you. He's a freaking liar.
And yet, for some reason, I called it. It's not on a teleprompter. I do things largely without a teleprompter, frankly, because it's hard to hold an audience if you're going to go for 1.5 hours or 2 hours reading a script.
I'm showing you this again. I want to re-show you. I'm showing you his lie again about turning. But him saying that it's hard to hold an audience when you're reading a script, which is a big part of his problem. because he really wants to hold his audience, right? And to do that passionately, he's got to throw them red meat. And that's what's killing his campaign right now, right? He's got to, every time he talks to his base, he pisses off or he pushes away the moderates and the people, independents, voters, and things like this, right? The people he needs to win. And every time he gets out there, he's got to, feed his red meat to the the right wing base, and this is what kills his campaign, right?
And I just talked about it, and I moved to my right, turned sharply to my right, ping.
Okay, that didn't happen. Wait, we know that didn't happen. Pew, 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 pew. That's great. That's great.
About it, and I moved to my right, turned sharply to my right, ping, pew. And if I didn't do that, I'm not here with you. So, yeah.
Again, I already showed you that in my last video and many other videos. I'm not going to do it here because it just gets repetitive. I showed you how that's not accurate, and he's going to say it here as well.
God has something to do with it. It's a miracle.
God had something to do with it, right? He didn't have everything to do with it or nothing to do with it. It had something. It was like 30% God, 30% luck, like 40% me, maybe. I don't know.
And God had something to do with it. And maybe it's we want to save the world. This world is going down.
Woo! God wants to save the world, so he saved you. And so you could have honey bunches of oats, right?
This world is going down. So it could be. But I believe that. I believe that. My sons are very good shooters. They're like scratch golfers, better, relatively speaking, with shooters. Great shooters. And
they're great shooters. They love to kill defenseless animals that are, endangered species and big game hunters and not eat them, just do it for trophies because, they're worthless pieces of shit, right?
Eric and Don both told me from 130 yards. I said, well, that's pretty far away, isn't it? They said, no, that's like a 1-foot putt with, weapons like the one being used. Plus, he was a good shooter. This guy was a good shooter. He went to the range and shot a lot. And
he shot a lot at the range. He used to shoot at the what? This 20-year-old guy, right?
He was supposed to be a pretty good shooter. They said a bad shooter would hit the target almost 100% of the time. So
no, that's not true. It's just not true, right? I talked about this, and the difference between the scope and the quality of the shot. And, you're killing a person, right? Like, you're not shooting at a target. Like, there's no emotion when you're shooting at a target, right? You're killing a person, a president, right? Former president. You're on a rooftop. There's people there. Your life's over. You're gonna go to jail. You gotta. Getting sped up and all these things. You took a shot. You pointed the gun at some guy climbing up on the roof. You have counter snipers who are zeroing in on you. Like, there's pressure that's on this shot, right? Like, the pressure. It isn't like you're just at the shooting range and you can take your time and breathe and it's not a life and death situation. Like, you got to make that shot. It's like different hunting when the prey's going to move and it's a living thing that you're going to kill. Like, people get, buck fever or whatever it's called. They start to shake. They can't, make the shot. I mean, there's things that happen, right? And so there's a lot of factors here, and he's making it sound like it's the easiest shot in the world. It's a football field and a half away.
Something happened. And I have to say the Secret Service sniper did an amazing job. He had 5 seconds to find the target and hit the target, and he hit the target within, think of this, 5 seconds. And he was much further away because
he didn't have to find the target. The guy was up there for a while, right?
Was over here. And this other person was over there.
So watch this. This is important. This is the thing I saw. When I turned the TV on, they were showing this.
They're away because he was over here, and this other person was over there.
See, for him to hit his ear, which I showed you. Let me show you on my video. So I showed you this before. So, to hit his ear, like they have him, they have him bent over like this. And the shooter would have to be perpendicular to Trump to hit his ear, right? I showed you this thing with parallel lines and perpendicular lines. I covered that in an earlier video. And so here is where the sign is. And Trump is facing here. The bullet would have to come from this direction. It would have to be someone over here because this is where the chart is, right? So Trump is turned this way, and the shooter is supposed to be here. I got three cursors going on here. This is where the shooter is, and he's acknowledging that the shooter's over here. So he'd have to be turned towards the shooter, which he wasn't, for the bullet to come whizzing by and hit his ear. And this guy's on an angle, right? And I'm talking about wind, all these different things, right? But Trump is facing this way. You can see that when the shot happens. So here he is, right? He turns this way, and then boom.
Said, take a look at what happened.
So he just turned that way, and that's when you hear the gunshot, right? So his head's facing forward here for a second, and then
Just said, take a look at what happened.
boom. And so just as he turns here, the gunshot, so the bullet comes whizzing by. This is where he is. And he grabs his ear, right? So he's facing 90 degrees to his right when the gunshots are fired. And that's impossible. And Trump's acknowledged where the shooter is, right? And so it's silly. Like, this whole thing is silly. Like, this guy can't hit Trump's ear from here. It's an impossible shot. There's no divinity. And Trump's saying he had just turned his head and immediately the guy fired. That didn't happen. We know for at least 40 seconds Trump was turned this way. And so the guy would have been looking at the side of Trump's face here and would have been firing that way. But the bullet, unless it curved, extraordinary curve here, and curved around his big dome, his big head, and then somehow hit his ear, it's an impossible shot. And so there's no miracle. He didn't get shot. There's none of this shit, right? It's all a lie. It's a hoax. And Trump is going against the video evidence and everything else we've seen here, right? Let's watch that again here.
And he hit the target within, think of this, 5 seconds. And he was much further away because he was over here and this other person was over there. So you have to give credit. And I have to also say about the Secret Service, when I was hit, I knew it because when I touched, there was blood pouring all over my hand. I said,
okay, that's not true either, right? So let's go back to this here. So he grabs his ear, and there's no blood here. Zero blood. There's nothing. Later on, we could see maybe there was like a drop of fake ketchup, but he touched his ear, and he said that there's blood all over his hand. That isn't true, right? But as we go through these pictures, there's no blood anywhere. There's no blood on his shirt. There's no blood on anything. There's no blood on his arm, his hand. The only blood is right here on his face, right? There's no blood on his collar. There's no blood anywhere, right? This is him. No blood here. There's no blood on his hand, no blood on his face, no blood on his hand here. That's the hand he touched his ear with. I'm already doing it already. In the video that I originally put this in, I was covering that. There's a little bit of blood on his ear. It's dried by now. Look, no blood on his hand there. No blood there. Just, blood dripping down here where he's on the ground. That's right after they poured it on his face, the ketchup. Right, Ketchupgate. This guy, what's really good here? Let's go back here a second. Let's go back here. No blood on his hand, right? No blood here. This guy's haircut. How do you let this guy into the Secret Service with that frickin' haircut? And so there's no blood other than his face. The only place there's no blood on the other people, there's no blood anywhere, right? So we've established that, right? And later on we're going to find out, Trump's going to put this massive maxi pad on his ear. Remember, here's the non-existent wound. And so there's nothing here. There's no scarring. There's no anything here, right? There's nothing to indicate that he was even cut here in his ear, right? Like, so let's say this thing right here, let's say that, like, and that's just probably part of his natural ear. And we don't have any, before or after. But, I mean, that's non-existent. Let's say there was something that happened right there, right? There's a little bit of a thing. That's non-existent. And so it's for him to say all these things and put on that maxi pad and pretend there was blood everywhere and it was some horrible thing. It's, barely nicked him, right? And I don't think that's even anything. I don't think anything hit him. But let's say it did. The guy said there was a 2-centimeter cut, which is half an inch, and that's not half an inch, right? And so, again, how does it hit here and not other parts of his ear? Like this part is sticking out more than that part, whatever it is, right? In terms of his ear. And so, like, it didn't happen. It's just a joke. And they should have just taken a chunk out of his ear. They should have taken a little chunk out of his ear over here to make it look like something happened. They should have showed you the wound before he took the bandage off. There was no stitches in it, right? It was a boo-boo. It stopped bleeding as soon as he stood up. When he walked off the podium, it was no longer bleeding. And so they squirted some shit on his ear, and that's, they brought him to the hospital, and they're like, you're not even hurt. It's at most a boo-boo, right?
I was hit. I knew it because when I touched, there was blood pouring all over my hand. I said, I guess I know what that is. And I was going down for protection. And they were screaming, get down, get down. There was bullets. And those Secret Service guys and Person Kate, they were on top of me in a matter of, I think, 3 seconds. It was time dead. And bullets were coming.
Look at the ears right there. You can see there's nothing.
I would hear the bullet. I didn't realize you could hear it, but now I know very well. Those bullets were going right over my head. They were there and very brave. There was nobody that said, I'm not going to be going there. They just, they were there very quickly, and they were very brave. There were mistakes made, obviously. He shouldn't have been up there. The roof should have been taken care of, and there were mistakes made. There's no question about it. But there was a lot of bravery also. We have to remember that. Okay.
A lot of bravery.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so why did God... You didn't answer the question. Why did God save your life? And you said God was probably involved, God partly, whatever it was, right? But why did God save your life? Honey bunches of oats. Why did God save your life, bro? Why did he do it? Like, you didn't even answer that. You said God saved your life. Why? You said maybe because he wants me to save America. Like, that's not an answer. Like, that's such a weak answer for a guy who's talking about how if he's not reelected, the country and world is going to be World War III and going to be destroyed. And you could say that, right? But you didn't even say God saved your life for sure. You're hinting at it. Because, again, the whole thing's fucking fake, right? You're a fraud and a fake. And he's, again, just doing the Trump stuff here. Okay, so this is Trump's January 5th speech in 2020. And you can see his ear his ear is exactly the same as it is here. There's a little bit bigger photo. But you can see there's that little, again, this is from a side view. I couldn't find a good side view. But you see his ear is basically the same, right? I mean, it's the same. It's just a different angle. And so there's no real damage here, right? Which we knew because it stopped bleeding almost immediately after he stood up. I mean, not almost. Immediately, as soon as he stood up, it wasn't bleeding anymore. There's no blood dripping from his ear as he walked to the car. No blood on his shirt, none of these things. Didn't need stitches. I mean, he didn't really basically need a Band-Aid. They just had to wipe off the ketchup, right? And so the guy he wasn't hurt, right? You can make this even bigger here, see? See, there's the little ridge right there. Right, there's that little nodule knob here. And there it is there. And so even if you said that looks like it was hit by a bullet, well, this is before that happened. And so it's the same ear. It's basically identical, just a little bit different angle of the picture. But there's nothing here. There's no damage, which we know because the guy, there was no damage. It's Ketchup. It's Ketchupgate. Okay, so I got a whole narrative to do about this. I already did this yesterday, the narrative about why isn't the mainstream media calling bullshit on this and truthers. And we'll get into that in just a second. But first, somebody sent me this. They lost the body of Crooks, whatever his name is, Crooks.
Breaking news, Thomas Crook's body is gone. Congressman Clay Higgins was put in charge of investigating Trump's assassination attempt, so of course he wanted to examine the body. Well, he just released a bombshell report about how that all went. My effort to examine Crook's body on Monday, August 5th caused quite a stir and revealed a disturbing fact. The FBI released the body for cremation 10 days after J13 on J23. Crooks was gone. Nobody knew this until Monday, August 5th, including the county coroner, law enforcement, sheriff, etc. Yes, Butler County coroner technically had legal authority over the body, but I spoke with the coroner and he would have never released Crook's body to the family for cremation or burial without specific permission from the FBI. The coroner's report and autopsy report are both late as of Monday. August 5th, they were a week late. The problem with me not being able to examine the actual body is that I won't know 100% if the coroner's report and the autopsy report are accurate. We will actually never know. Similar to releasing the crime scene and scrubbing crime scene biological evidence, this action by the FBI can only be described by any reasonable man as an obstruction to any following investigation effort.
Okay, so this was posted by Kim Protective Mama Bear. We need to say prayers for Trump. They are out to get him and America needs him. Anyone really surprised? It was an inside job. Are they trying to bury Trump for 8 years? Is anyone really surprised? Look at who is doing the investigation, LOL. They did the same thing with Kennedy. Will not let the coroner see Kennedy body. That's the government you want. Hillary acquaintance. What's next? See, these are all people thinking that this is evidence supporting that there was some kind of conspiracy, deep state conspiracy. But it's silly because Trump isn't saying that. And Trump would say that, right? But Trump can't say that because he's a part of it, right? Why isn't Trump demanding that the body, why isn't he bringing that up? Why isn't Trump bringing this up in his speeches when he's railing against the system and how the system's out to get him? Why isn't he saying, hey, why did they get rid of the kid's body? Because he knows it's fake, because it's all fake, right? And these Trumpers think it's evidence supporting their BS worldview, right? Okay, I'm segueing into this audio I did about his ear and the blood and things that we know for a fact aren't happening because we can see it on video. And why isn't this is, there's two things going on here, and I'm going to talk about the media is always calling bullshit on Trump's lies. But Trump has never, ever backed away from a good conspiracy theory about how he's being persecuted, right? And, they've given him this cherry narrative. Like, this is showing you that Trump is owned, and he's like, I don't know why they're doing this, whether they want him to be elected or just giving him this moment of heroism. But whenever they have these like false flaggy type of events, these kind of things, these staged events, there's always a hero or two, right? But the story moves on. Like I talked about before, as they unroll this, they develop these stories and they roll out these events one after another. These little packages of information that the three-letter agency, whatever's running this thing, and when they roll out these packages, usually it's the CIA. There's a little bit of information, drip, 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 as they unveil the narrative, and they go through like the shooter's motivation and the whole thing with the manifesto, all these types of things, right? And there's always heroes. There's always going to be heroes because they need heroes in this, because Americans are heroes and there always has to be bravery. And when people get the hero narrative, which they'll get in sports or whatever it is, right? But they gave Trump this huge hero narrative where he gets up and says, fight, fight, fight. Elon Musk is slabbering all over him. And, he's given this cherry narrative. But the problem for Trump is that these other hero narratives, they just move on really quickly from the story, and then everybody forgets about it, right? They roll out the event, and then they move on to something else. But with Trump, he's going to bring this up every chance he gets, reminding everybody how he was fight, fight, fight hero. Of course, they have all this merch and the pictures, and he'll bring an artist up, and they want to memorialize this moment where Trump's pumping his fists and saying fight, fight, fight in this WWE narrative they gave him, right? Like shamelessly putting it on there. And it's that narrative that really, for me, was like, oh, this is fake as fuck, because they gave him the thing. They gave him the hero narrative. It was just, and how bad it is for Trump, right? But they've given him this, this narrative, and what would make the narrative even better is if he claimed the deep state tried to take him out. The information at the FBI and the people who are investigating it are covering up, and he was, he made about investigation. He was calling for a special congressional investigation of why he got shot. It's just the kind of thing that Trump would do, but he's not doing that. And he would call out this thing, the body disappearing, them cremating the body like he's bin Laden, throwing him into the ocean, right? These bullshit things that they do, right? And so Trump's not calling them out, calling bullshit on any of this stuff. So why is that? Like, his people are, like, all of them believe that this is some deep state, cover up, and they're into this conspiracy theory about it. But those people are unwilling to look at Trump as being part of it because they can't, right? Because they're, psychologically, they're in a cult. And so Trump can do no wrong when it's clear that Trump's part of it, because otherwise he'd be calling bullshit, right? And so here's the narrative that I put out yesterday about the, mainstream media going against its tendencies to call bullshit on Trump every chance they get. Okay, had what I would call, I guess, maybe an epiphany or realization. Not, I want to make it that grandiose. But so I finished doing the screen flow, grabbing all the footage that you see, all the stuff you see in Kamala and Tim Walz and Trump, and wherever I am here, and I'm going to stick this audio in somewhere. When Trump was talking about, he looked down on his hand and saw blood, right? And so Trump's story is a lie. Like, there's multiple lies. There was no blood on his hand, and you can see it with video evidence, right? There are things that he contradicts the video evidence that you're seeing. Like, there's no blood on his hands. He looked down his hand, there was no blood. Then when he got back up, there was no blood on his hands. All these things. I've already showed you that, right? And so that's, that's there. And you can see it with your own fucking eyes, right? You can see it with your eyes, right? Like, you've seen it, and you know that what he's saying is not true. So the hardcore Trumper fans, yeah, of course, they're going to rationalize everything. The Trump base, the Trumpers. But everyone else thinks Trump's a liar. Everyone else knows that Trump's a liar. And the CNN and MSNBC, the mainstream media, and the Democrats, they're obsessed with calling Trump out as a liar, right? I'll show you I'll put the clip of the guy who counted Trump's lies and gumballs, right? There's a dude he counts Trump's lies and gumballs on CNN. And there's a closet somewhere in CNN with one of those, carts on wheels with big jars of gumballs that represent Trump's lies. I always make the joke because the guy says it works, and I'm like, no, it doesn't. Because gumballs, especially for my generation, even now though, are one of the biggest impulse items where your kids walk by, or when you were a kid, you walked by the gumball machine. And, I'd never heard anybody said, I'm not in the mood for a gumball, right? So gumballs, which are pretty much universally desired, and when I see the gumballs, I go, hey, I want a gumball, right? Even though it's not good for my teeth and all these things, right? So the thing doesn't work because they are associating Trump's lies with something good, which is a gumball. But it's also, I guess, a metaphor because it's not good for your teeth and your sugar. All these things. But in terms of your perception, gumballs are positive. But the point is that they go to extraordinary efforts to point out all of Trump's lies. They put fact checkers in place at debates and, in live events, and they're checking they're fact checking his lies right in real time. And they're never hesitant to point out any of his lies. And so he just lied about having blood on his hands. They could say he said he had blood on his hands, but he didn't. And it's a significant lie because this moment, this thing that happened with Trump is an epic moment because of him pumping his fists in the air and saying, fight, fight, fight. Going into the convention, it was one of the best political moments. And if it was real, it looks like Trump is a complete badass. But even if it isn't real, people are thinking Trump's a complete badass. At a time when America's on the ropes, Trump looks like a fighter, and, all these things are going on. It makes Trump look great. And we just saw Elon Musk just slather all over Trump for being a badass and brave and courageous in this moment of pure bravery. And Trump is caught lying about that event, right? Multiple times. Things that he said don't add up with the video footage and the facts on the ground. So why in the world wouldn't CNN and MSNBC, that are love to talk about Trump's lies, even questioning these things, right? They don't even have to question the full event. They don't have to go full conspiracy theorist. But they can say, hey, he's lying about this, right? That he's embellishing. Everyone knows now that there was no damage to his ear, and I go into that extensively here as we move forward with the video. You'll see it. But there was no damage to his ear. And so he wore this massive maxi pad to the convention, but he didn't even need a bandage the first day. In fact, it was probably counterproductive, right? The thing stopped bleeding almost immediately. There was the blood that Trump talked about and all the things he talked about are exaggerated. Just the way he's played this thing out since the beginning. He's exaggerated it at the very least. So let's say you can't go and believe that this is some sort of massive hoax. You can at least say Trump's bullshitting and exaggerating, which is not a good thing for him because it's one of his winning issues. And as as the media and as Kamala Harris disparaging his signature move, his signature event, would be in your advantage, and they're not doing it. Why? Why aren't they doing it? Then I thought about truthers, and I talked about this in a whole video, but I'm going to talk about it a slightly different way. Why aren't truthers that completely believe in false flag events, completely believe that in deep state type events. Completely believe that the government and, in this case, the Secret Service and all these people would perpetrate fraudulent events like this. You're programmed and you're hardwired to call bullshit on these type of things. And when Trump starts, his story starts falling apart and you're supposedly a truther, why wouldn't you question it, right? You don't have to call complete bullshit on it, but at least question the inconsistencies in the story and stop talking about him like he's a badass and like this was an epic moment. The deep state tried to take him out when Trump is caught lying and, he can't keep his story straight and his story contradicts the evidence that all of us have seen. Like, why would you as a truther? I mean, you guys know more than me, but I don't think there's that many truthers that are calling bullshit on this. And some of these people aren't hardcore Trump truthers, and there's no Trump truthers, right? If you believe in Trump, you're not a truther. Like you're delusional. Even from the get-go. So this is what happened to me. I'll retell this story. And so my wife and I heard that there was gunfire at Trump rally. And we were busy doing outdoor work and, work, whatever kind of stuff that was going on. And I didn't know that Trump had been shot. Neither one of us did. For a day, it's almost like a day. And then I watched the video. I'm like, oh, Trump got shot. Like it's, and I heard it say, yes, Trump got shot. And I watched the video. And when he got up, he went down. It looked a little fake when he grabbed his ear. The whole thing. And, I'd seen that previous video where Trump had cowered when he was, when there was an attacker and he looked weird. I showed you this, clip in one of my other videos that happened like in 2016 where the, Secret Service bum rushed Trump because there was some sort of a threat. And Trump was like, ducking, bobbing and weaving and stuff. But anyways, he never struck me as like somebody who is physically brave, like would put himself in physical harm. And somebody who would be, he's just not one of those people. And so when he got up and was pumping his fist, I'm like, this is a bad B movie. There's these movies that are for right-wing people, for Republican people. I saw it with The Sound of Freedom. Now, if you're a right-wing Republican, you think that Sound of Freedom is great, and you buy into all that Trump bullshit and all these things. But I see how they're pandering to you, and how they're telling you what you want to hear, in a way that's dishonest, right? And it was totally in Sound of Freedom, which now other people are finally calling out. I mean, some people did in the beginning, but in terms of I'm hearing that, now all of a sudden everyone realizes, oh, that movie was bullshit. It was like that kind of a movie. There's all these movies that when you start watching them, I can see it's red meat. It's designed for Republican-based people. And, this type of profile. Just like you see things that are for liberal feminists or for any number of demographics. You can see which demographic they're pandering to, right? And it's like the WWE shit with Trump. Like I said before, that the ear was like, when they're concocting this script, like how do they make it like Trump almost died, right? But like if he's, let's say it was a heart shot. Well, Trump would have to receive a bullet through the chest or the shoulder, right? Like being grazed on the arm or something like that. But being grazed on the arm, there's no divinity because it's a long way from the arm to the heart, right? And so the only way they can say, oh my God, this was a miracle, and they can invoke God, because they want to bring in the evangelical vote even more, that God interfered, that God did something to prevent Trump from dying, like they want to have divine providence, as Trump has put it. The ear is brilliant because the ear is right next to the head, right? So an inch either way, like it goes into, and again, it's still lower than his brain. Like even if it, did hit him it would hit him in the face and went through his sinus and maybe through the back of his skull, maybe, some kind of brain kind of shot, right? But it isn't like they can graze his head. Like that's just, then they're going to mess up his hair. Like there's going to be a scar there. Like it's, it just wasn't going to be something where if he had a headshot, people would question his mental capabilities. I mean, he's old like Joe Biden. Maybe the guy should withdraw just because of, this trauma that's happened to him, right? The air is brilliant because the air doesn't affect his job performance, but it's close enough to his head that it makes it look like he almost died. And then they can get the blood involved, and then he can pump his fist and say, fight, 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 or mouth the words, fight, 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 which he did, which is a signature moment, right? That's the moment that makes Trump look great. When I saw that, I'm like, if they laid him on the ground and they did what Secret Service is supposed to do and protect his head, keep his head down in case there's a second shooter, But when I saw him pumping his fist and waving at the crowd and firing up the crowd, it was just obviously staged. I told my wife, she was like, she wasn't there yet, but, after a day or so, and then, on her own, through her own thing, she realized it was fake too, right? It just became more and more obvious. But I knew that they went for too much. They went for the big kahuna, like I said, right? In previous videos. They went for the whole enchilada where they got Trump looking brave and, he had victim consciousness, but he looked like he's fighting back and, it looks like the deep state just tried to take him out. And he's like, fuck you guys, fight, 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 fight. He's just the kind of stuff that right-wing people lap up, right? Just the kind of stuff that Trumpers lap up. And then other people, who are a little bit torn and maybe don't like Trump, all of a sudden they look at him in a different light, right? It's a huge moment for him. And taking that moment out is the job of CNN and MSNBC when he's obviously embellished and lied about certain things. Why not say something? But they won't, right? And you should question that because they call him on everything else. They call bullshit on Trump when he's not even doing something wrong or something that he's saying is good. But again, they can't confront something like this. It's too big, right? It gets into the whole question of the Secret Service and the government and on a level that's, uncomfortable for everybody. So Kamala can't question it and CNN can't question it. But what about the truther? It's like anybody who's a truther, you have to at least, when you see them lying about it and bringing it up over and over again and talking about it in ways that are true, you have to call bullshit, at least on that part. And you have to question the whole thing. That's what being a truther is, right? Whether you like Trump or not, or whether whether you love Trump or not, or whatever it is, right? It's something you have to do. And if you're not doing that, you're not a truther, like I said before. I made a whole video about this, right? And so it says here, the juiciest Trump, this is a comment from somebody. The juiciest Trump scandal ever gets totally buried by the media. Thank you, Paul, for keeping Ketchupgate in the spotlight. Well, the thing is huge, right? Ketchupgate is huge, right? Ketchupgate is kind of like, it's the whole enchilada because it ties Trump to something that once he's tied to it, he loses all the Trumpiness of being an outsider. And it destroys all the Trump stuff that the right-wing people and the Trumpers love, that he's not a part of the deep state because he is, right? This is something that's coordinated with the mainstream media and everybody else is involved in the cover-up and not calling bullshit on something that's so obviously fake. And, Trump has gotten the help of the Secret Service and the government and everyone else. Law enforcement, all the people involved in this thing are participating in this hoax on his voters and people who are going to donate money to him and these people who look up to him. He's lying to you all. He's not lying to, he's lying to everybody, but you most of all. It's tailored lie to you guys to manipulate you guys, right? The Trumpers. And so this is a huge thing, right? It's the biggest thing of the, I don't know if there's been a bigger presidential election scandal than this in terms of someone deceiving or pulling a hoax like this, right? That involves a shooter and a dead guy, a patsy, all these things, right? It's, it ties him to all those other events that they did like this. It's all, it's all bad for Trump. It destroys any credibility that he has. And every time he opens his mouth about it, he lies about the event, right? He lies about what happened. He said, I knew it was bad when I saw blood all over my hand. There's no blood on your hand. There's nothing. And there's no blood gushing. There's no blood anywhere but your ear. And maybe there's like a little bit of something on your hand that you almost need a microscope to see. But it wasn't at the tips of your finger where you touched your ear. And so that was all performative. And the whole fight, the blood's already dry by that point. How is that even possible? And you guys know that, when you get a cut, it either stops bleeding or it doesn't. Sometimes you have to put pressure on it. Sometimes you have to, usually you'd have to put pressure on it. You have to do something. And Trump's cuts stopped bleeding without any kind of medical attention. And it was, it was at most a boo-boo. It's not real, but it's most a boo-boo. And he's milking this fucking thing, right, in an embarrassing way. And the people who are supposed to call this thing out, truthers in the media, are mum on it, which tells you everything you need to know, right? And it becomes more and more fake as time goes on. It doesn't get more and more real. It gets more and more fake, right? The story is, distorted. We see that there's no wound on his ear now that he's taken the bandages off. There's been these events, and it just doesn't feel real. Nobody's talking about it. There's nothing going on in terms of the Secret Service debacle. The media has more or less forgotten about it. Trump is the only one who talks about it. And then when he talks about it, he's selling things that didn't happen, that you see that didn't happen. So, whatever you believed in the moment and at the time, it's fake as fuck now. It's so easy, right? Like anybody should be able to see that this is fake. Okay, so today's Saturday, August 17th, almost 10 a.m. Finished this video. Just got to wrap it up here and put it up, and it'll probably be up on tomorrow morning, Sunday, the 19th or the 18th. I almost skipped a day there. But I just wanted to say this. There's some more things I was going to say about, pandering to an audience, which Trump does, and of course Kamala does to a lesser extent because she's pandering to a wider audience, right? But Trump's pandering to a specific demographic. But I want to, and I'll come back to that in another video. But what I want to say here is, starting off this video is about how frickin' incompetent and strange and, pathetic people are. And I showed you that judge in England that was prosecuting, sentencing somebody for stuff they posted on the internet, which is, almost 2 years, right? And the wigs that they wear. Like, why are they still wearing those fucking wigs? Like, you see these, it's just so bizarre. Like, England's such a bizarre country. But things have gotten so bad here in terms of the population and their ability to just function and, be able to see things and the lens in which they see the world. And, people have just degraded, and the consciousness level has gone down so much. And, that's the reason why the society has to collapse, because we're barely functioning, we have no grasp of reality. We're just gone. And everybody's influenced this by a certain extent. Part of the problem is the deluge of information and the stimulation people get from the internet and being, in this illusionary world. It was already bad before, the lies and the deception and all of it. But now with the internet, it's just, people can't even distinguish between what's, real life and what's happening on the internet. And everything's intertwined. And now, of course, AI and these things. Its effect on people and, their level of functioning, and it's not good. Right? And so, this is the reason for the apocalypse. And I'll, get into that more as we go forward here. I'm going to wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the Apocalaughs. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.